this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
In 2018, the FBI took down a ring of spies working for China's Ministry of State Security, one of the most mysterious intelligence agencies in the world.
The Sixth Bureau podcast is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to The Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, The Case of Lucy Letby, we unpack the story of an unimaginable tragedy that gripped the UK in 2023. But what if we didn't get the whole story?
Evidence has been made to fit.
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapsed.
What if the truth was disguised by a story we chose to believe?
Oh my God, I think she might be innocent.
Listen to Doubt, The Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, it's Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And today I'm talking with my dear friend, Krista Williams.
It can change you in the best way possible. Dance with the change, dance with the breakdowns.
The embodiment of Pisces intuition with Capricorn power moves.
So I'm delusionally proud of my chart.
Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Eckerd. In 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
But here's the thing. Bachelor fans hated him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
That's when his life took a disturbing turn. A one-night stand would end in a courtroom.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, Robert Evans here, and I wanted to let you know this is a compilation episode. So every episode of the week that just happened is here in one convenient and with somewhat less ads package for you to listen to in a long stretch if you want. If you've been listening to the episodes every day this week, there's going to be nothing new here for you, but you can make your own decisions. What's meta? My verse. This is It Could Happen Here, a podcast entirely dedicated to the metaverse, which is the promise of the human future. On with me, as always, is my co-host Mark Zuckerberg.
Hello. I don't know how Mark Zuckerberg talks. I'm not sure how. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know whose voice you were doing.
You could just do a data voice, I guess. But
yeah,
who knows?
He sounds like nothing, like no one. Like the absence of a soul.
He sounds
anyway,
like
Garrison,
the noise when it's dial-up. That's his
yeah, that's what's going on inside his head at any moment. When he's not actively making the internet worse, it's just a dial tone in there.
Awesome.
Garrison, what are we talking about today?
Well, yeah, we're going to be talking about the metaverse and how it's different from what people talk about it as, and yeah, it's gonna touch on a variety of things split up into two parts. But first, I would like to paint you a picture with words, a word picture. So you're
a wicture,
yeah.
You will. Mm-hmm.
You're walking through your favorite grocery store. There's carts passing by, horrible music playing. Mm-hmm. It's the lighting is white and overexposed and underexposed at the same time. It's hard to see, and this person who looks like an employee keeps popping up and trying to take you to different sections of the store. You're trying to just ignore her. It's very annoying. All you need to get is the stuff you have on a little list, and it's awful. Eventually you get so fed up with this whole experience that you you go to where the wine bottles are, you take them out, and you arrange them into a giant penis on the floor, because that's the only thing you can do, because you're not actually in a store. You're in your living room, and you have a horrible headset on, and you're trying to do shopping in a virtual grocery store. And that's the actual kind of scope of what we're going to be talking about today, is virtual marketplaces and how they interact with seemingly real marketplaces.
Yeah, I'm sure this is inspired by. There were a couple of videos that dropped recently. One of them from I think Walmart.
We're going to be talking. We're going to be.
It was.
We're going to be talking about it. So yeah. So a couple of days after the 2020 New Year, a video went viral across the social medias, ranking up over like 11 million views on Twitter. And it was titled "How Walmart Envisions Shopping in the Metaverse." Now. So what followed was like 2 minutes of an embarrassing like VR jank, including like throwing around virtual gallons of milk from your cart into a virtual fridge. Many dunks were made, fun was had, but what few people probably realized is that like this wasn't a Walmart metaverse test store. This was actually a 5-year-old tech demo from before non-Neil Stephenson fans even knew what the term metaverse meant. So a few years back, a tech company called Mutual Mobile partnered with Walmart for a project set to, quote, reimagine retail with virtual reality. Now, that sounds very fancy and important, but considering this was 5 years ago, and you're not hearing about it until now, shows how impactful this thing actually was. The first stated goal of the tech demo, according to the Mutual Mobile website, was to impress influencers at South by Southwest 2017. So, just like the so-called metaverse is now, this was largely a promotional project and a way to attract investors. This was never actually a serious thing. I'm
going to say it right now. South by Southwest was always one of the stupidest things in the world. And when it comes back, it will be still, because it's stupid. It's a stupid place for the most insufferable people in the world to come and talk about technology. Some people also listen to music. That's fine.
So yeah, for the experience itself, they used an original Oculus Rift and programmed a roughly like 4-minute linear expedition into a barren, hellish digital Walmart where you pick up and throw.
It did sound exactly. My favorite thing about this video is they were clearly using the audio of some sort of like shooter game, because
it was
every
awful.
time like things would change, it would sound like you were in like fucking Doom going through a portal. It was extremely funny.
It was bad.
It sounded like hell.
You pick up and throw fake wine bottles into your blue digital cart, and the whole thing ends with a fake drone delivering an $800 TV that you fake purchased. It's not great. What Mutual Mobile and Walmart were trying to do, they have like a statement on their website back from 2017. It was they said that Walmart envisioned unveiling a fully virtual shopping experience that puts shoppers inside the store without ever leaving their homes. To attract customers and dispel the misconception that they're not as advanced as their more digital counterparts, brick-and-mortar establishments are not only accelerating investments in areas like web and mobile, they're also exploring the very edge of emerging technology. Walmart virtual reality is a case in point. Potential shoppers can virtually pick up products, read labels, talk to virtual associates, and fill their shopping carts. But the goal wasn't just to create something interactive. Walmart needed something that showed the potential of VR in retail while putting them ahead of the competition. So, I mean, this was 2017, so this was kind of ahead in some ways, but also ahead in the ways that it's kind of showing how not useful this example is. So obviously, like, this 5-year-old video resurfaced now due to Zuckerberg and Epic Games, forcing an astroturfed metaverse into the cultural zeitgeist, coupled with their, conflation of anything VR to the legendary metaverse, right? Because VR does not equal metaverse, nor is it necessarily vice versa. But now these terms are getting used so interchangeably that someone can stumble across this video and be like, "Oh, look at this metaverse store," when like it's not. It's just a VR tech demo.
The metaverse, in order to be like the thing that people have been imagining through cyberpunk since like the 90s, it needs to be persistent and interact directly with the real world in a number of ways. Like it's this.
We'll get into kind of what metaverse could be in the future in terms of like the it could happen here idea, and then not just a metaverse but a series of metaverses, what they could be and how that kind of negates the original idea of it in the first place. But when asked by Vice News about the resurgence of their Walmart project, Mutual Mobile replied, "The vision of a virtual shopping experience we helped Walmart realize back in 2017 stands validated in the metaverse era of today. This whole experience has only encouraged us to keep experimenting, innovating, and leading the charge with cutting-edge tech." So, I mean, considering most of the virality of this was people joking about it, I yeah, sure, okay, Mutual Mobile, good luck with that. So, a few days after the Walmart video went viral, rumors of another big box store going metaverse started to circulate, again accompanied by a video of a possible 3D metaverse storefront. Reports emerged starting in India claiming that H&M had announced that it would offer its customers a three-dimensional shopping experience in its virtual store inside the metaverse via something called, now I don't know if it's Keek City or Seek City. I'm not really comfortable saying either of those things because they sound weird, but I'm gonna go with Seek City. That's a little bit better.
Keek. It sounds like it's a slur. I know it's not, but it's a slur.
It sounds like it's a slur. So I'm going to say Seek, but it's SEEK. So this account on Twitter called Seek VR shared the following from its official Twitter account: shopping in the metaverse with Seek Coin. Concept VR store presented to H&M by Seek creates mainstream use cases for Seek Coin and scaling virtual reality beyond games. So I'll get into what Seek is in a bit, but the report said that customers would be able to walk through the store, choose the apparel they wanted to purchase in the Seek City universe, although the clothes could only be worn in the digital environment. Payment would be made with Seek Coin, and customers could have the opportunity to order the same apparel from H&M's physical stores later, but you're buying two separate things. One of it's the digital skin, one of it's an actual, real thing. So what is Seek? Seek was launched in 2018. It's a metaverse coin project built on the Ethereum blockchain, and their goal is to connect artists, athletes, and other digital content creators directly with their fans in virtual worlds. Seek's NFT marketplace is designed to enable real ownership of digital items.
The only way in which I would actually want that is if it's me having a very sexual Zoom chat with Pitt. You know what? We don't need to. Garrison, please continue.
Okay. And quoting from Seek's website, Seek currently offers a range of immersive VR experiences within Seek City, including theater, concert arenas, sports complex, hangout lounge, and more.
Wow, it's all the things you can do in your real home, but weird and on the internet.
I really hate it. This is horrible.
I see a potential appeal for people who are out in the sticks or in parts of the world where they feel they're very politically or whatever disconnected, which is the same thing the internet already does.
I'll talk about
it being in VR will make it better. I don't know. I've lived in the middle of nowhere and relied on the internet to be social, and I don't think I would have wanted to change the internet in for this because it sounds. Anyway, it sounds
I'll talk about use cases in a sec, but so. End users will be able to use Seek Token to make purchases, vote for content, control programming, and much more after token launch. Seek VR, in partnership with Universal Music, can realize live performances of world-famous artists such as Bon Jovi, Lady Gaga, U2, Sting, and many more can take place on this platform. So, Seek is it's kind of this startup, but it's been around for a while. It's trying to do virtual venues inside the metaverse. They do have contracts with Universal, so it's a mix of it's a mix of this coin. So it's a mix of this cryptocurrency, also trying to use this cryptocurrency in this world they're trying to build up. Their roadmap to metaverse right now. First thing is payment integration. So using Seek Coin, they want Seek Coin to be the coin for everything in the metaverse. They want all of the metaverse to be based off this thing that they invented called Seek Coin because it'll make them money. Next thing they want to do is create a creator-enabled ecosystem. So kind of copy the content creator thing we have right now, port that into the metaverse, but again, have everything, you can invest in your creators, so you can vote on what they do using Seek Coins and all of. We talked about personal ownership in the previous episode, but then a lot of it, they have an NFT marketplace, avatar marketplaces, etc. But a lot of the stuff is built around concerts, venues, a lounge, movie theaters where you can do stuff in VR. That is the main thing that Seek is trying to do. They do have this one quote somewhere. Oh yeah, the future milestone. So after they achieve this Seek metaverse where everything is ran through Seek, all of whether you're on Oculus, whether you're on Vive, all of it gets run through Seek. So it's one multiverse. one metaverse. Their future milestones are, quote, a VR space academy. They do not say what that means.
Okay.
Keek Studios, again, kind of unclear. I'm guessing like original content. And then the last one is a blockchain metaverse alliance. Those are their three big future milestones after they get their
Wait, what was that last one?
Blockchain metaverse alliance.
I mean, this was like in the Facebook thing too, right? The idea that we're going to integrate NFTs, but it was also clearly just like they tossed that in there on the Facebook one. There was no evidence they'd thought seriously about NFTs or blockchain. It was just had gotten big while they were preparing the thing, so they tossed them in there. I get the idea, right? Like the thing that they keep pitching with this is that you'll be able to have an item in one game that is yours. The company doesn't own it. You can take it to other games, which anyone who makes games will tell you is fucking nonsense. Something like that might be vaguely possible in a metaverse where everything was forced to use the same engine, and everyone was also forced to abide by a bunch of strict rules by Facebook. That's probably violating antitrust laws, and also it seems like a ridiculously Sisyphusian task with no real benefit. I don't think anyone's going to do it, but I'm guessing that's what they're referring to when they want to jam the blockchain up in the fucking metaverse. Like, what else could it mean?
The blockchain metaverse alliance.
Yeah,
all of the blockchains and metaverses get aligned into like they want to put all of the metaverse stuff into one. Only
you can wear this shirt in the metaverse.
Yeah,
woo.
So
just like the real world.
The freedom of the internet. Can't you feel it? The ever-expanding possibilities.
I do love, because they keep talking about within the context of metaverse games, like, you'll get to unlock a character that's just yours, and nobody else can play it, and he'll have special abilities that means he wins all the time. It's like, why would people play that game? Like, there was a fucking, I think it was Business Insider, someone's article talking about how neat it would be for games to work this way, and, like, think of all the money you'd make, people wanting to watch your character win. It's like, people don't want to just, like, watch a guy who's structurally unable to lose because he bought the right character in a racing game win every race. That's not... No one's going to pay to watch that. Do you understand what people watch races for? Like,
no. Yeah.
Anyway, it's all nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Let's hear from our good friends at our products and services before we come back and talk more about Seek coins, I guess. I don't know. Seek.
Yay.
All right, we are back. So, yeah, Seek Coins virtual reality spaces run on smart contracts through the Binance Smart Chain, and they're run through the Ethereum blockchain. So there's about 744 million Seek coins in supply. The maximum supply capacity is capped at 1 billion coins. Seek coins peaked at $1.16 a year ago, after launching it at around 4 cents. They're currently being traded for around 60 cents. So that's what actual Seek coins doing. Like people do use this, just not many people. Mm-hmm. Like they do have these contracts with Universal Music, but before this H&M thing, I never heard of Seek coins. So 2 days after the rumors began circulating that H&M was, partnering with Seek, H&M said, "Nope, we do not. We are not doing this." But they did not close the door on future possibilities. They said, "We'd like to confirm that H&M is not opening a store in the metaverse at this time. We're also not collaborating with Seek." So the official Twitter account for Seek subsequently clarified later on that the store that they were doing was just a concept that was presented to H&M and not a launching virtual store yet. But they do say that they're in discussions with H&M to make this a reality, but it's not a reality as of now. So this kind of begs the question, like, what about a 3D digital space is superior to a 2D digital space for simple tasks like shopping online? So once you start, unfolding questions like this about the internet, metaverse, AR, VR, there are more like internal sides to this than you would have initially estimated. But first off, before we kind of have this discussion, we should split this into two categories. One for shopping for like real physical items that you plan on like receiving in person, and then digital items that don't physically exist and are just on your computer and monitor. So obviously, like, there's no clear advantage in most cases to traversing an isolated virtual environment in order to order food as opposed to just scrolling through a web page. But once you expand out of the confines of VR's sensory deprivation, 3D technology in AR, so augmented reality, does actually have some useful prospects, including some that are already in use. Amazon and IKEA, for example, have options on their respective websites and apps that can like project furniture options into your living space, so you can see how
that's
they
the kind
fit.
of thing that has some future, I think. Yeah.
So currently this is being done on your phone screen, but an AR glasses application of this would actually serve its purpose quite well.
Sure.
Like, this is something
like
that
people would want. Yeah.
Yeah, the phone
This
screen
makes
version
sense.
is pretty mediocre.
And these are and that's kind of the thing. The place we're at, we make fun of this stuff a lot because most of it's nonsense. There's a lot of potential in some of these ideas, but their potential for like on the same level that the air fryer has potential, where it's like a thing a bunch of people will buy, but it's not. None of this yet is stuff that's going to completely change. Like, yeah, you might get a few million people to get these glasses or this app. This glasses for a couple of reasons, but who would use this app to like help plan out how they're setting up their houses. You might get a few million people who do that. It's not going to be like an iPod or an iPhone or like Facebook. That no one's figured that out yet. There's some neat products that are going to be valuable, but we're still in the stage where nobody's figured out fundamentally what people want from this, as opposed to like tiny specific needs. In the same way that like there was a number of futurists who quite accurately figured out with a smartphone, like, oh, people want a thing that will give them access to all of the knowledge and ideas in the world, and also let them yell at anybody anytime they want. Like, that's something that is going to be incredibly successful, and it has, and it's changed the entire world. Zuckerberg was like, people want to be able to be racist faster, and by God, we wanted it, and that was huge. I don't like it's a good idea. Like, yeah, let people scope out how their room is going to look when they're shopping or whatever through AR, but we haven't yet hit that. This is going to change the world, because being slightly better at using IKEA will not change the world.
Yeah, I think as an avid air fryer hater, I do think comparing Metaverse to the air fryer is actually a very
love
apt
my
comparison.
air fryer, which I love to say to Garrison.
I know Garrison hates it when I use the air fryer.
I love my air fryer.
Anti-air fryer action is my new tattoo.
They screech like the person at the end of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
They do. But my goodness, do they cook my food faster?
They air fry it.
Fry it with the air. Wow.
Yeah.
Almost like it's impossible. Anyway, Mutual Mobile's digital marketing strategist talked with Vice after the Walmart video went viral, and he explained that like the demo was made to show the potential virtual reality and shopping experiences that they can have for different people, including its ability to connect like elderly people or people with disabilities to a shopping experience from the comfort of their own home. Something that he thinks might even be attractive to people who have been through several rounds of COVID quarantine. And I can kind of understand this last argument. During early quarantine, I definitely used my VR headset more often than I had before. And with our alienated capitalist world, I can see the use of walking around a digital store if you're stuck at home due to something like a plague, or if you have a physical or mental reason that makes going to a store difficult. But this can help that, but also it's very reliant on how these types of stores are set up and how these stores like affect your brain. It's like a big part of going to the grocery store. What it's designed to do is make it so that we're not just following a shopping list. There's like a structured joy of discovery. Everything about the design of the store is to get you to buy things you didn't think you needed before you walked in. And we're trained from birth to find this process pleasurable. So in that way, walking around a VR like Walmart or H&M might actually make some people happy, despite that being sad and dystopian if you stop and think about it, right? Like, because that's actually like it's a very capitalist thing, but it does make us happy because that's what we've been trained to do since we're babies. So there is that side of it in terms of like, yeah, I can see if I really don't want to leave the house, but I want to get the experience of walking through a place. Maybe I will walk through a Target to get groceries. I don't know. Some people maybe might do that, but otherwise, it it is much simpler and easier to just scroll through a 2D thing on a web page and collect and do the things you need.
That's the thing. Like, it's like, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Because I when I was making fun of one of these videos, somebody like called it out as being ableist and was like, think of all the uses this has for a disabled person. If they can use this, they can use Amazon. And like, as a person who sometimes I don't shop for groceries on Amazon, but I've shopped for groceries online. It's fine. It's everything it needs to be. You can get your groceries online, and the metaverse is just going to make it like weird and off-putting and unnecessarily complicated. Because at the moment, I can get groceries with my phone while I'm like jogging, or as I'm like sitting in traffic, or like while I'm on a Zoom call listening to Garrison talk about the metaverse, as opposed to putting on a headset and like doing the same thing basically as driving there, but more expensively. It's dumb.
Are you grocery shopping right now?
I am ordering 1,700 cans of Zevia and 40 pounds of raw beef.
Live your best
That's
life.
a normal week's worth of food for me.
That's a lot of Zevia.
That's literally like 2 days for him.
See, but Robert, you could be doing this while wearing a bucket on your head and walking around a fake store.
I could wear a bucket on my head to the real store. They can't stop me. I usually wear a bathrobe.
This is the first half where it's like, buying actual physical items that you plan to receive in stores. Furniture, this actually kind of makes sense. Food, it's a little bit iffy. The only kind of consideration there is if people want the mental effect of walking around a store, if they find that pleasurable, then it's a thing. But, it's way more efficient to just scroll through your phone. As for the other side, buying virtual items, whether they be, NFTs, video game skins, or super special exclusive VR hangout rooms, I don't give a fuck how this works. If you want to walk around a VR mall to buy your VR art and your VR clothes, knock yourself out. I buy Sonic the Hedgehog games. We all have our weird things we do that don't make any sense.
Yeah, that's the thing. These grocery stores are just going to be like the 700 weirdest people in the country masturbating as they buy wine and milk.
See, that's the thing, Robert. When I was doing the digital picture in the beginning, I had two scenarios. One where you align the bottles into a dick. The other one I was going to say you'd take off your pants and start masturbating. And I decided not to do that one. So I'm happy that you brought it up.
That was the right call, Garrison. That was the right call.
Because, that is the actual use case for this, is that people are going to be walking around these fake Walmarts just all jerking off. That's what's going to happen.
They're going to have this animation of a real female employee of theirs who like pops up when you do something you're not supposed to do and explains something to you, and it's going to be impossible to remove initially, and people are going to turn it into a whole weird horny thing and like make her appear in all these circumstances. It's going to be the only thing that goes viral. Like, it's going to be the only thing people remember 5 years later about the first of these.
I'm going to circle back to this towards the end of part 2, but this is the actual way to handle the metaverse, because this thing is going to be forced on us one way or another. We're going to have a form of it. And honestly, the best thing we can do with it is either ignore it, or maybe more attractively is to fuck with it. Like, that's going to be the thing. That's going to be the thing to do. There was an article a few days ago that the headline is "Final Fantasy porn interrupts Italian Senate Zoom event." So someone joined in and started playing porn from Final Fantasy VII.
Yes,
and like this is the thing to do.
Yeah,
this is the way that we need to do it. If there's gonna be dumbass like meetings on the Zuckerberg metaverse, people need to go in and make it weirdly horny.
Yeah, Garrison, I could not agree more. That's what you need to do, citizens of the internet, is look up something awful Habbo HABBO hotel. That's the kind of shit that we need to be doing in fucking there was basically a children's video game. It was an early kids MMO, and a bunch of weird adults and something awful decided to create an unsettling cult of people who all looked identical and marched around doing all of these weird, unsettling things in a children's game. It was very fun. In Second Life, when it was the new big sexy thing, there was this very self-important tech writer, investor type person who was doing a Q&A, and people just like animated thousands of floating penises going around.
Yes. And this is going to be the thing. This is what we're going to have to do, because if it's going to be this horrible corporate hell, the only way to deal with that is to make it unusable for everybody, so that so that it doesn't get used. And the way to do that is by putting dicks everywhere.
Yeah.
Dicks and boobs
If Joe
everywhere.
Biden ever decides to do a multiverse presentation, or if one party or another decides to do a multiverse debate, it is everyone's moral responsibility to fuck it up.
Civic
Yeah, it is your
responsibility.
duty.
Yeah.
This goes beyond civic. This is as a citizen of the human race, you know? As a member of this species, you have to try to find a way to fuck it up for them.
So,
nothing could be more important.
So if you're buying digital items that you never plan to receive in person, I do not care how you do it. Knock yourself out. We all have our weird things. I buy Sonic DLCs. People do World of Warcraft. If you want to get an art piece you can only hang in your digital room, that sounds miserable, but have fun.
Yeah, I used the internet to order very off-putting Danish cheese product.
Oh, yeah, that did happen.
That was off-putting. It was weird. It was like caramel.
You tried to
nonsense.
trick yourself into liking it when you were eating it, though.
I don't remember not liking it because I ate a good amount, but I've had the second cube sitting around and I've had no desire to open it.
No desire to, yeah. Anyway. So
I didn't not like it. I don't know that I ever want to eat it again.
I love that for you.
Quality audio content. So here's the thing. I have not actually been talking about the metaverse. Nothing I've mentioned thus far actually is the metaverse and doesn't have really anything to do with the metaverse besides the technology of VR and AR. You know, it turns out companies like Facebook, Epic, Microsoft, and Valve, the way they talk about the metaverse is kind of all a big lie. Like it's not metaverse. It's an astroturfed top-down marketing scheme to turn more of you into data and to create viral marketing. Like that's instead of an interconnected solution to the alienated bubbles of Web 2, it's just a social media network that encompasses all of your vision and encourages even more digital alienation and less in-person socialization.
Hey, kids, you know the worst stuff about the internet? What if it was the only thing about the internet?
What if it was accompanying everything you see instead of just a computer screen?
It's like all of the gaming CEOs who were talking about the promise of NFTs and like, I think it was the one of the guys who runs Reddit, I think it might have been Alexis Ohanian or whatever their name is, who said that like in 5 years, 90% of games will be NFT based because people don't like wasting their time and not getting compensated for it. You're like, do you know what a game is?
That's not why people play games.
What a game is?
So I'm gonna talk more about metaverse as big tech or just bigger tech in part 2. But this will be wrapping up part 1 of the digital storefronts, and then we'll get into some more kind of applications of this and how we're actually seeing it in the second half. Cool. So Robert, do you wanna go buy a virtual block of Danish cheese?
No, I did when I was hanging out on top of a mountain the other day. I ran into a guy flying some drones, which I normally don't like, but this guy had a VR control rig for his very nice drones.
Oh yeah.
That seemed kind of dope. That seemed kind of dope. I might
cool.
get into that shit.
Sure.
But no, I have no desire to shop. I like going to the grocery store. I do as much of my shopping that way as possible because it's like soothing and nice and I think very human to go be around other people to get food. But
yeah, that's the thing. You know, in things like the pandemic where that becomes harder, I think that is where the use cases for the digital stores actually come in. Like theoretically, but you've never seen them
that feeling, that soothing, which it all just looks deeply off-putting.
Yeah. The problem is that it's stuck in the uncanny valley, so it's not pleasurable to be in those digital spaces.
Yeah.
Because even though it's being marketed as a solution to alienation, it's just more alienating. Because it's like very clearly exposing the alienation that we try to avoid. So it falls right in the middle of the uncanny valley, and it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
But we will talk more about that in part 2. If you want to follow the show on the social medias, that is Cool Zone Media and Happen Here Pod. You can keep up with my tweets when I don't know what I do on Twitter anymore, but that's Hungry Bowtie, and you can harass Robert Evans at iReadOK.
Yeah, motherfuckers.
Do it.
That's the show. Do it.
Do it or I'll kill you.
Robert, no.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives, and I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the 6th Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the 6th Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Mark Zuckerberg. Welcome to the podcast where we talk about the metaverse. I enjoy barbecue sauce, and
you don't sound. That doesn't
that
sound
was my Mark
anything
Zuckerberg.
Like
that was pretty good.
That is SNL worthy.
Thank you, Garrison.
Because it's so bad. All right. Now we have part.
That was my only goal.
This is part 2 of the metaverse that never was. Here at It Could Happen Here, and we're actually going to be talking about It Could Happen Here.
I can't wait till we launch a metaverse show and pretend we never said all this shit. It's going to be the best, Garrison.
You know, Robert. remember when I was talking about Seek City and all of the virtual venues?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I just got a message from our beloved parent company, iHeartMedia.
Oh, good.
That they plan to extend shows into the metaverse. Which was announced a few weeks ago.
Well, Garrison,
about
I've
a week
always
ago.
thought that the metaverse was a pretty good idea.
I think we will talk about how the metaverse could be cool later in this episode, but then we'll explain why it won't be. But yeah, iHeartMedia did announce Web3 and the metaverse are the newest consumer platforms for iHeartMedia. So, sorry, I was just working.
Yeah,
in,
it's fine.
Working in a Matrix 4 reference there. So,
yes, I see what you're doing there, Garrison.
Thank you. Anyway, so I'm guessing for non-Neil Stephenson fans, many of you probably had not heard of the metaverse before last year. VR, sure, you've heard of VR. AR, maybe. But probably just as like niche gaming technology. Not this massive, not like a massive successor to the internet. Primarily 3 companies: Facebook, Epic Games, and Valve. The later 2 being mostly gaming and software companies. Kind of all decided the best way to push their niche VR and software technology into the zeitgeist was with this flashy new marketing. And it kind of worked. Metaverse is now in many more people's personal lexicon. But it's not really the metaverse. Like the Walmart thing, it's a way to attract investors and drum up free press. But it's still the same old VR and AR applications of the technology.
Yeah.
None of these companies are trying to make metaverse a thing that we actually want or, working towards an interconnected, immersive, 3D, open source successor to the internet. All of the different websites and services we use united under one digital roof, like a super platform that, is made up of all of these sub-platforms. You have social media, online gaming, and all of the ease of life apps, all accessible through the same digital space under the same digital economy. That thing isn't happening. People that's not what people with money are actually pushing towards, even though they're still using the metaverse term.
Yeah.
There was a great piece in Wired that came out last month as a part of their Matrix VR issue. It was called "The Metaverse is Simply Big Tech but Bigger." It was by Cecilia D'Antasio. It's a wonderful piece, and I'm gonna say a quote from it right here. By the mid-2000s, it became clear that money wasn't in building individual websites that we could access on the open web. It was making information sorters, channels, aggregators, and publishers open enough to scale with user-generated content, but closed enough to reap enormous profits. This was the evolution from Web 1 to Web 2. For nearly 30 years, the gravity of the consolidation has pulled the cyberspace together under the auspice of fewer and fewer corporate titans. The freaky little planets get drawn together, collide, and make bigger planets, collide again, and make stars or even black holes. Facebook eats Instagram and WhatsApp. Amazon swallows 24 e-commerce sites. And you're left with these few supermassive players controlling and appropriating the celestial motion of billions of users. This is how big tech got big. End quote. So, yeah, now we have all of our isolated toolboxes, and they really fight against any inter-platform integration. You have, Microsoft Office, and their Office suite. You have, Google Workspace. You have Apple's own, AirDrop, Apple Pages, and Final Cut Pro. Plus the nightmare that is Adobe's subscription tools. Google wants you to spend all day checking your Gmail, traveling with Google Maps, watching videos on YouTube, and browsing on Chrome. Meanwhile, your friend texts you via iMessage, uses Apple Maps, and calls his mom on FaceTime. This is
not
the
a
internet.
Single person in the world uses Microsoft Edge.
That is true. But this form of the internet is the one that the metaverse is growing out of. Metaverse is just a way for tech companies to add VR and AR and the accompanying extra surveillance and data collection to this their own portfolio of proprietary products. But in order for that to happen, they need to convince us that we need headsets for the next evolution of the internet. So it's not surprising that Facebook and Zuckerberg were the first ones to crack this thing wide open. They own not only 4 of the top 6 social media platforms, but also Oculus, which is the most popular manufacturer of VR hardware. VR has been relegated to niche gaming technology for basically 2 decades, and Zuckerberg decided the best way to sell more of his headsets and software was to give the tech a fresh new paint job and call it Metaverse. And it's sort of working. There were approximately 9.4 million shipments of VR headsets in 2021. 3.6 million of which were done during the holiday season, after Facebook's big metaverse event. It's suspected that the Quest 2, which is made by Oculus, aka Facebook, makes up for more than 3/4 of all those headsets sold. So demographics data isn't explicitly available, but probably a lot of kids received these things as holiday gifts. Oculus, Meta, Facebook does not release its VR headset sales figures, but the Oculus app that you need to have to make the headset work shot to the top spot in Apple's App Store on Christmas Day. That was the first time it's ever been the number one app on the App Store, so indicating a spike in headsets received as holiday gifts. So they're selling a lot of headsets. Like Oculus is selling a lot of their things. Like, I got one a few years ago, but now there's more and more of them circulating. But it's still all relegated to VR. Like, it's not actually metaverse. Arguably the closest thing we have to the actual metaverse is stuff like Roblox and Minecraft. Now, that is still not, that's not immersive 3D. You're still looking at it through a 2D screen, but it is software that gives users development tools to create their own projects within this shared 3D space. What separates these things, and basically all attempts from making the metaverse, from being the ideal metaverse is still the proprietary aspect. Everything is isolated islands. You can't take your Roblox game into Minecraft, right? It still is isolated to their specific things. But, nevertheless, Roblox's CEO described the company as the shepherds of the metaverse in early 2021, and he is kind of right. Like, that's not totally inaccurate. I'm going to quote again from the Wired piece by Cecilia D'Antasio. If big tech's unchecked growth continues, there will be multiple metaverses, if there are any at all. Each will be interoperable under one tech giant's giant umbrella, the same way Apple is both a walled garden and a convenient, habitable terrarium for its dedicated consumers. Users love the seamlessness of Apple's proprietary operating system, the ubiquity of iMessage, and Apple presumably loves the 30% commission it can charge on developers who sell apps in their App Store. So Epic Games is the other big metaverse proponent right now. They were actually making announcements about metaverse a few months before Facebook did. And the CEO of Epic Games, Tim Sweeney, has been outspoken against a metaverse ran by a big tech giant like Apple. But that's not really genuine, because his version of the metaverse entails a cyberspace made accessible through Fortnite and Unreal Engine, two things owned by Epic Games. So, it's not like he's not actually sincere about creating an open source thing. He just wants to be the one to control it. He's just upset that he thinks someone else might. He tried to sue Apple last year and failed. And the California judge told him that Epic Games seeks a systematic change which would result in a tremendous monetary gain and wealth. The lawsuit is a mechanism to challenge the policies and practices of Apple and Google, which are an impediment to Mr. Sweeney's vision of the oncoming metaverse. So it's not actually about, him being against big tech giants and being against a big tech giant ran metaverse. It's just that he doesn't like that he won't be able to make as much money with it if multiple tech companies work together to make it. That's really what he's concerned about. He would rather be in control of this thing. Because, it would be really interesting to see if multiple tech giants work together to create an actual successor to the internet, an actual, how the internet's just when you open up your computer and you have access to the net. It's not like running a specific program. You get to go on all the things. It would be interesting if people actually work towards creating that. But no, it's all about creating very isolated operating systems with a very isolated tool chest. You can't access Steam games via the Oculus store. These things don't work. Now you can use the Oculus on Steam games, but not vice versa.
They're making things the way they're making things because they're not trying to design a new internet. Because for one thing, the internet wasn't designed. It was the result of a bunch of people who were doing things that interested them, all kind of intersecting and building upon each other. And second, they're making individual profit tunnels. They're not actually trying to create. They're not trying to actually trying to think about what people might want next or what people might want beyond the internet. They're thinking, what can we sell that we're not currently selling? And that's never going to be the thing that figures out. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, on that point, I'm going to do one final quote from the Wired piece. If these companies dominating cyberspace did decide to collaborate simultaneously, piecing together opposite sides of the quilt to create a digital textile, that would be very polite. But is there a world in which Microsoft, Facebook, Epic Games, Apple, NVIDIA, etc., combine all of their valuable products, Captain Planet style, into an architect of the metaverse under open source standards nobody in particular reaps billions from? That's sort of a tall task. To overhaul your code and collaborate with your competitors, why would 3 or 4 tech giants partner to make a metaverse when they already spent decades and billions constructing one of their own? So yeah, it's never going to happen. The way society is made, the way internet works, that's not ever going to be a thing. Speaking of companies and things that you can buy online and advertising, here's some ads.
Woo!
And we're back.
Oh.
And we're going to talk about possibly the most successful version of AR of VR technology. We're going to talk about the actual use cases that are generating actual profit. So there was a tweet a few days ago that I'm just going to read the tweet and then we'll talk about the implications. This went very, very viral. I caught this very early on, though, and I started writing about it, and then a whole bunch of articles dropped on the topic. A farmer in Turkey has fitted his cows with virtual reality goggles to make them think they are outside in summer pastures. The farmer found out that these pleasant scenes make the cows happier and produce more milk. Future is metaverse! So... We're gonna talk about the cow matrix. We're gonna talk about yeah, it is
amazing to go back in time and tell people, hey, you know that hit movie The Matrix? In the future we're gonna do that, but for more milk. To get milk.
So the thing that went viral about it that kind of broke the story for a lot of people was this farmer in Turkey with the pictures of the cows with VR goggles on them. Pretty fucked up. But the idea and the actual technology used came from Russia. Farmers worked together with developers, veterinarians, and consultants at the here's a Russian town name, or I guess a farm name, Kragskernovk. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds right.
It's close enough.
I think we can. I think you nailed it.
It's this farm near Moscow. And they teamed up, so all these farmers, developers, and vets and consultants teamed up to make this cow matrix project. And there was an official statement from the Moscow Ministry of Food and Agriculture reads, "The global trend towards universal computerization significantly simplifies work processes in many areas and allows you to achieve unprecedented results. Russian milk producers keep up with the world standards and are even ready to offer the market new and unexpected solutions. On a farm in the Moscow region, a prototype of virtual reality glasses were tested to improve the conditions for keeping cows. Employees of one of the largest farms in the Moscow region, together with IT specialists, decided to conduct an experiment studying the influence of virtual reality and developed a layout of VR glasses." So the herd donned these VR systems adapted for the heads of cows. And they also had to make the imagery work. They needed to tweak the color palette in the software to make it suitable for the cow's vision, because cows can't see red or green. So there's just shades of yellow and blue. So in order to replicate what grass looks like to them, they had to change the stuff. But yeah, and they programmed a unique summer field simulation program and subjected it onto these cows. The Russian Ministry of Agriculture concluded that the cow matrix does work. In a statement from 2019, this was a few years ago, officials said environmental conditions have a significant impact on cow health, and as a consequence, the quality and quantity of milk produced. So this is the thing. I talk with someone I know about this, and they're like, well, if it makes the cow actually happier and healthier, then what's the problem? And the problem is that you're gaslighting an entire creature's reality. You're not consensually gaslighting their reality, and I don't like that.
Yeah,
I don't think
everything we do to cows is without their consent. So it's one of those things where it's
but we're also not gaslighting their reality in this. We're not depriving their senses of what the world is.
No, this seems like an escalation in our war on the cow.
Yeah. So this other farmer in Turkey heard about this and decided to try it out on his cows. And yeah, the fucked up cow matrix, or the cowtrix, does seem to do its job, extracting more milk from the cow to increase profitability. A quote from the farmer said, "We get an average of 22 liters of milk per day from the cows in our farm. The milk average of the 2 cows that wore the VR glasses went up to 27 liters." So yeah, when the story first broke, there was the most popular article was from a site called Futurism, which made me very depressed about futurism.
Yeah, you should be depressed about futurism, Garrison.
Yeah, it made me mad enough that I'm gonna read some of it to you.
Oh, good. Thank God. I haven't been angry in seconds.
That cows produce more milk when VR makes them think they're in beautiful green pastures proves that keeping them in agriculture environments isn't healthy, nor does it make them happy. Putting them in a cow matrix does sound a little grim, yes, but you can't argue with the results.
Oh my God. I can.
I say you actually can.
Also, all this has shown is that, like, potentially if you put cows in this thing during the winter when it's not sunny and bright outside, then they are happier. This has not shown that, for example, taking all cows out of pastures and sticking them in matrix boxes would make them happy.
Because the thing is, they're not in pastures. They're in little jail cells with VR goggles on their head. So, like, that was the use case. And, like, the quote from the farmer is, like, they're watching green pasture and it gives them an emotional boost. They are less stressed. And the farmer said he plans to buy 10 more. So, like, you can spend thousands of dollars on specialized cow VR headsets. Or you can, use that money to buy more land for the cows to spread out. And if we're at that point in society that in order to make enough cow milk, we need to gaslight cows by overruling their senses with a clunky VR headset on their little fuzzy faces, maybe we should stop having milk. Maybe we should, maybe that's it. Like, if we require this to have milk in our cereal, then nope, no more. I'm not gonna do that. I refuse. That's not, like, it's already an iffy practice if you don't buy milk like locally from a farm, So if we're doing this, that just, like, immediately checks me out of every, like, no, I'm just fully not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's kind of evil. Like, the whole industry way by which we produce meat at scale is pretty evil. But that's an escalation. Escalation.
It's the specific thing of, like, of overruling their reality and senses of another living creature like that is that, for some reason that upsets
them
me.
Into a way for you to get, like, meat, and not just, like, turning them into food, but
like making their living conditions really shitty and then trying to trick them into thinking they're not.
Yeah. It's worse than just having them live in shitty conditions. I think from an ethical standpoint, it's more pleasant for the animal, but from, like, our standpoint, it's worse to me.
Yep. So, speaking of, I don't know.
Don't do this to cows.
Is there some segue that we can work this in? For an ad break?
What does essentially force you to live in an alternate reality that allows you to be more productive for the people who make money based on your existence?
Buying these products and services that support this podcast?
Oh, I was just going to say podcasts in general do that, but yes.
Yeah,
also,
sure.
Yes.
Cool. All right, we are back. And my last big section here is titled "We Are the Cows." So that's gonna give you a sense of how we're gonna talk about what's happening.
Don't like it.
So what the cow tricks really demonstrates, though, is that the end goal of all this is to make us the cow, right? And we already are to some degree with, like, the internet and smartphones. But this is more. This is an escalation, right? Like, the ghouls at Silicon Valley and the whole tech world they want a world where we are forced to don hardware rigs that block out our body's senses and replace the input with digital coded counterfeit. That's an internet that tries to convince you that you're inside of it and it is inside of you. That is what they want, really. Like, even if we get the metaverse that I would prefer, like the mythical open source interconnected successor to the internet with all of its different websites, tools, and games that I like all together and intuitively accessible through a shared digital space. Even if we get that, like, which we won't, and if there's safeguards to protect digital privacy that are built in, which there wouldn't be, that doesn't actually make the real world much better. Like, in my opinion, AR technology specifically could be really cool. But
there's stuff about it.
But redesigning the world to require headsets, goggles, or AR glasses would suck. Like, that would, not only for people who can't get that technology, right? If we redesign the world to be like, the only way to interact with systems is through this digital lens, that's going to suck. We already have that to some degree with smartphones and the internet, but this is another escalation of it. And again, like the cow, it's just going to be a way to paint over our late capitalist climate disaster of a world. Metaverse is a tech capitalist solution to our current and pressing political and ontological problems. And I have to use the bathroom really badly.
Well, I'll talk for a little while. I think a big part of what Garrison is saying is that instead of relying on these tech industry ghouls to build the future for you, which is a future in which they sell you a way to hide from the hell that they have made of the world and others like them have made of the world. Instead of doing that, you could just spend the rest of your life listening to podcasts. Put blinders on over your eyes, cover up all of your senses but your ears, and just exist forever in a cocoon made entirely of my voice and occasionally Garrison and Chris's and Sophie's voice, but mainly my voice.
So you're saying not listen to just any podcast, but podcasts that you benefit from.
I don't think people should listen to any podcast that I don't do. That doesn't seem right. Sophie? Where's my angle on that, huh?
I don't know.
I don't know how long we should vamp while Garrison just leaves in the middle.
I really needed to pee.
Well, it's okay. I just told everybody that we're the metaverse now, Garrison. Our content.
I drank so much coffee this morning, it was a problem. Okay. And similar to all this, remember the John Carmack interview from 2020?
Yes. Oh, that's such a bummer.
The Doom co-creator and former CTO of Oculus.
Yes, these bodies are a curse, John.
Yeah, on the Joe Rogan show, he openly said, "The promise of VR is to make the world you wanted. It is not possible on Earth to give everyone what they would want. Not everyone can have Richard Branson private islands. People react negatively to any talk of economics, but it's resource allocation. You have to make decisions about where things go. Economically, you can deliver a lot more value to a lot more people in the virtual sense. We can have virtual devices that can get cheap enough that lots and lots of people will be able to have these. Not everyone can have a mansion, not everyone can have a home theater. These are things we can simulate, though, to some degree, in virtual reality. Now, the simulation's not as good as the real thing. If you're rich, you probably have your own home theater or mansion and private island. Good for you. You're probably not the people who's going to benefit the most from this thing. Most of the people in the world live in cramped quarters and are not, and that's not what they would choose to be in if they had unlimited resources. There's this piece of art that goes around the internet. It's this dystopian kid in a corner, drooling with goggles on, with like rainbow pictures, but it's a terrible looking place. And people say, this is the world you're trying to build. People plugged into virtual reality and ignoring the world around them. And Carmack's response is encouraging. He says, but is his life really better off if he takes the goggles off and he's in the horrible place? So I think Carmack really has convinced himself that virtual reality is a path to making the world a better place. In the interview, he compares VR to the invention of like air conditioning. He says, like, I live in Dallas. It's 100 degrees here. We change the world around us in all that we do. We live in air conditioning. People don't generally go, oh, you're not experiencing the world around you because of air conditioning. This is what human beings do. We bend the world to our will. And this is how things get better, by building technology and distributing them to people so that they have something better than what they would have if they didn't exist. Now, if you dig into what he's saying here, there's actually a few interesting things. Because, for one, air conditioning is actually kind of bad. Like, the way we're using it and what it represents, it is a Band-Aid solution to our continual problem of heating up the Earth.
And it's making the problem worse every single day.
Yeah, and honestly, it's like a Band-Aid that also makes the problem worse, because AC contributes to a lot of energy use and emissions.
Made out of human shit.
But, air conditioning is also an actual material change, right? Like, it can actually help people not die due to heat. The metaverse in VR, as talked about, does not improve a middle to lower class person's material conditions. And to say so demonstrates how disconnected these tech bros are from a regular person's reality. the metaverse and VR and like virtual worlds are going to be built based on the perception of reality held by those who create them. That's why we're getting shitty digital private movie theaters, fake mansions, and metaverse concerts and H&M NFT stores. They're giving us a simulated version of the world that they actually get to live in for real. But we can refuse this. We don't need to take them up on this offer. If we're going to be stuck with multiple proprietary branded metaverses that are made by rich tech bros to mirror a world that the rich tech bro gets to live in, the best thing we can do is fuck with it. We can sabotage it from the inside. We need to spam floating dicks at a metaverse concert. This is the actual thing that needs to happen because, like...
Look, we all know terrorism is fun, right? Everybody loves terrorism, but there's horrible consequences for doing it in the real world. In the metaverse, there's no laws against terrorism yet. You can terrorize however you want in the metaverse, and it's just trolling, and that's fine. So do as much of it as possible until they make it illegal.
The concept that would go really well with this type of thing is the poetic terrorism concept of this applies like perfectly to this idea of how we need to fuck with these digital spaces that are trying to be created. Because they're pretty bad. During 2021, Bitcoin consumed all of the electrical energy by equivalent to a country like Argentina. In 2021, the Bitcoin network handled like 97 million transactions. So this is roughly 0.012% of the worldwide volume of non-cash transactions. But Bitcoin was responsible for 0.54 of global electricity consumption on total, which is astronomical. Like it is ridiculous. On average, that's like 1,300 kilowatt hours per Bitcoin transaction, which is so much energy. The power consumed by a single Bitcoin transaction on average could power an average U.S. household for 1.5 months. It is ridiculous how much it's getting used, and they're trying to build, like the Seek City thing. They're trying to build this metaverse off of crypto, which they're like. I'm sad because like crypto could be really similar to the metaverse. Crypto could be really rad. Like crypto could be an actually super rad thing, but the way it's being used right now is really environmentally damaging. And this linking of Web3, the mythical Web3 and the metaverse to crypto is showing like, it is kind of like the Band-Aid solution where it's not actually fixing the problem, and it's kind of making the problem worse because they're so set on linking it to crypto right now that it sucks. Like it's gonna happen and it's gonna suck. What you can do is you can spam Final Fantasy VII porn. You can spam Sonic the Hedgehog feet pics. This is the only tool we have. But save for actual terrorism, which we're not going to talk about on this podcast, we can talk about poetic terrorism. That is something that you can do. You can fuck with these systems from the inside and make them unusable. And that's really the only thing. And that's what I'm going to do in my spare time because it's fun.
Yeah. Do poetic terrorism in the metaverse. Go fuck it up for them. And maybe in the process, here's my dream, Garrison, that perhaps in the process of fucking it up for them, we build something that we actually like.
That's the thing, right? Yeah, that is similar to how the internet kind of got originally created. Of course, now it's turned into this hellscape. But that'll probably happen anyway.
It'll take 10 years or more for the metaverse.
But we can get a little bit of fun out of it.
And we can have some fun with it like we did on the internet for a couple of years.
Uh-huh.
Before it all got real bad.
So that is the metaverse that doesn't exist. And yeah, so fight against the cow matrix as best as you can.
Do your best. Pull them out. Build a city for the cows in the center of the world.
Make a cow Zion.
Yeah. It's up to us.
God, this is depressing. All right, that's the episode.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives, and I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the 6th Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the 6th Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to It Could Happen Here, a show about things falling apart and how to maybe put them back together a little bit better than they were before. I am Robert Evans, and with me this week is a guest I'm very excited about, Chris Begley, author of The Next Apocalypse, The Art and Science of Survival. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Robert.
Now, Chris, before we get into the meat of our discussion, I have to talk about what you do for a living, because for years and years, it was my job to go around the world. I talk to people on pretty much every continent about their different interesting jobs. So I've interviewed everybody from like brothel workers in Nevada to Iraqi counterterrorism special forces in Iraq. And you have probably the coolest job title of anybody I've met. You're an underwater archaeologist.
That's right. Yes.
How did you, I mean, was it just kind of like, were you kind of laser focused on that goal, or was it more you were interested in archaeology and you loved diving, and so the two just kind of made sense together?
Yeah, well, I started out as a what I now call a terrestrial archaeologist, working on land as most people do, and worked for years in Central America. Honduras was my focus, as you saw in the book.
Yeah.
But other places nearby as well. And really it was about, I would say, 13, 14 years ago, I wanted to just branch out a little bit from that. And one of the things that all archaeologists have seen is that, there are certain things that really just aren't as explored as other things. And one was all of the archaeological resources underwater. I mean, we hear about underwater archaeology or maritime archaeology in the Mediterranean, right? Roman shipwrecks and all that. But there are big chunks of the world where we've done very little to see what's out there, And one other interesting thing about that is there are many different things you could look at underwater, but often we look at shipwrecks. And shipwrecks are different from regular archaeological sites because, a shipwreck is a moment in time. That all happened in one instance. And so when we're looking at that kind of archaeological site, we see this snapshot that we don't see when we look at a place that was occupied over hundreds of years. So, so that wasn't my focus, but it became sort of somewhere I wanted to go as I learned more about it.
And one of the things I find really interesting, the basic thrust of your book is that the way in which we think about civilizations falling or collapsing or however the ways in which folks tend to discuss that when we're talking about the Maya or the Romans is very different from what archaeologists who tend to study these cultures, how they tend to perceive of what you might more accurately call a decline or a decentralization or whatever. I think there's a number of terms that we could use, but these ideas that like you have these civilizations and then they suddenly fall apart are not really based in rigorous historical analysis usually. There's some cases as you go into the book. And I'm interested in that because you're kind of coming at from a very rigorous historical standpoint in this book. A lot of the stuff that we talk about on this show in a more contemporary sense, and I'm kind of wondering how the idea to write this sort of came together because you started it before the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously,
that's right.
That had an impact on the book. It's
yeah,
on all
everything.
Over there. Yeah,
yeah. Well, I was. One of the things that I do is teach wilderness survival courses, and I don't do that as frequently as some people that sort of dedicate themselves to that do, but I do it fairly frequently, and it became obvious to me over time that people were taking these courses not just to learn how to deal with being lost out in the wilderness, which is sort of was my vision. What do you do if you unexpectedly have to spend a night out in the woods or 2 or 3? They were really thinking about what do I do when things fall apart? How do I take care of myself? How do I take care of my family using these skills that you could use in a situation where things had fallen apart? And that sort of oriented me towards the fact that, people were worrying about the future. I mean, I could see it. I could see it in my students at the university. I could see it in the people's faces at the supermarket. There was something going on there that was concerning people, and a lot of it had to do with climate change. And that, I think, was the focus initially for me writing this, because what I saw was, sort of the prepper community and survivalist community looking at things that really seemed to be short-term and didn't at all focus on what we really saw historically. So I think that my initial motivation to write this was really just seeing this concern that was growing among people about what the future is going to look like. And then, of course, COVID hit, and that really brought all this to the forefront.
And are there any specific ways in your mind that you kind of think on how COVID altered what you were writing, or how you conceived of what you were writing? Like once you have this kind of vision that's inspired by the things that you're seeing and hearing, particularly in these wilderness survival courses, and then as you get started, we have this horrible plague hit, and a number of things start to happen very quickly. How does that kind of alter the trajectory of what you're writing?
Yeah, I guess there were some just sort of practical logistical things, obviously. Right. Some things that I intended to do, or ways that I'd hoped to interact with folks in the course of interviewing people for the book or writing it, wasn't going to be possible. But in terms of thinking about how things happen, the big thing for me was how it became politicized so quickly. That was, in the, well, now you see all of the memes, talking about the zombie movies where half the population doesn't believe they're zombies or something. That was never really on the radar, at least not on my radar before. And so now, it is, because clearly not only do these things happen, and then you have a group of people that are dealing with it, you have obviously the dynamics within the group, which of course we knew, but to see it play out in this way, in this sort of dramatic way that really altered the course of history. I mean, the pandemic could have turned out, differently, but it didn't. And part of the reason that it didn't was because of the way folks reacted to it.
And I'm wondering, because a chunk of your career and a big chunk of this book is kind of looking at, in places like Honduras, where these civilizations entered decline. And in some cases, it was very sharp. Like within a fairly short period of time, 90% of the population leaves or is deceased. And you see like the crumbling of a lot of these governmental institutions and whatnot that had organized life for a while. You see the pretty significant migrations. Is there any ways in which kind of the last 2 years as an archaeologist has changed or informed how you were thinking about these places that you'd been studying, and these moments in history that you'd been studying for so long?
Yeah, in some ways, it brings some of it into a little sharper focus. For instance, one of the things that archaeologists had long talked about was that during these declines or these collapses, that it's uneven. It's not equal for everybody. It's not equal over space and time, and certainly depending on your position in society, there's different ways in which it plays out for you. And that's something that we see. We see it from access to vaccines to even things like if we think about folks that are unvaccinated now, there's a chunk of those people that are doing it for sort of political reasons or other ideological reasons. But there's also a big group of those folks that are doing it because history shows that they should be wary of anything that society tries to do to them. And so, you have these things playing out for different ways for people from different regions of the country, or political orientations, or race, or ethnicity, or a whole variety of things. And so, seeing how uneven it was, the pandemic, makes me think that it certainly was that way then. The other thing that we see when we look archaeologically is that it's these big structures or systems that collapse that really is the collapse. And the things that cause it initially, whether it's, deforestation or drought or warfare or even a natural disaster of some sort, that really it's the way people respond to those and the way these systems deal with those changes that really creates the problems that you see later on. And we can see that now. For instance, one of the things that we're talking a lot now about is supply chain issues, right? And this is a result of COVID, but it's not a direct result. I mean, it's not because the crews on the ships or at the ports or truck drivers are sick. It's because of the ways in which all of this disrupted things. And especially when we get these really efficient but inflexible systems, like a lot of our shipping system was, these disruptions result in really big changes. So, you have these huge ships that can only dock at a few ports. Once that gets backed up, you can't really shift and adjust. And so that's, I think for me, just a lot of it is seeing it play out, where we see the fact that we have something that sets it all off, but then we have the response of the system or the structure that really creates the day-to-day impact.
I suspect a big part of kind of why we conceive popularly of quote unquote collapses in the past is based on, as you talk about extensively in your book, the way in which we look at it kind of in fiction. And in fiction, it's nearly always like the societal equivalent of a bullet in the head, right? The zombie plague is out, and in a couple of days, everything's fallen apart. Yeah. And the point that you make in this is that it's probably, I mean, this isn't exactly how you phrase, but it's probably better to look at it kind of like, it's like a tumor or something, where the things are set in motion that are going to lead to things falling apart much at a point before a lot of people probably would have noticed it. The problem can be too far gone before it's really obvious. I
think that's a good point, and that's really something that even with COVID, it shows that, right? Mm-hmm. The problems are not only the existence or the appearance of this virus, but first of all, how did it appear? And that has to do with decreasing habitat for wild animals and the proximity of human populations to animals. And then we have increased communication and travel, which, is not a bad thing, obviously.
Sure.
But it is going to change the way in which these things spread. But then we have the way that we divide ourselves up into nation states, and the way in which we have economic systems that are working in certain ways. So, the vaccine gets here, but not there, and so forth. But yeah, that's, that I think is at the heart of it. You have these things that have been set in place. You have these parameters in which you're going to have to react, and they really set the stage for what's going to happen. It's like looking backwards 4 or 5 moves in chess to see how did we get in this situation. It's not just because of that last move. It's because of the last 10 moves.
Yeah. And one of the things you bring up that I like is that if you're looking for kind of a historical example of a collapse that most mirrors the way we tend to look at it in fiction, it would probably be what happened to the indigenous population of particularly like North America after the arrival of colonizers, which was by a lot of accounts like 90% of the population dead within a fairly short span of time, primarily from disease. This really rapid and cataclysmic shock, but also at the same time, as much as it does seem to mirror some of our, kind of fictional depictions of viral outbreaks or other sort of societal calamities, the ways in which people survived don't really, in any meaningful way, mirror our kind of popular fictional depiction of like who makes it out of that sort of situation. The strapping military veteran with a rifle and a stockpile of food or whatever.
Yeah. That, I would say that certainly having these skills to keep yourself alive is important. And it is true that if you don't make it through the first 30 days, you're not going to make it through the next 30 years. Mm-hmm. But, the way people survive outside of a few days, perhaps, when they're dealing with some of these, what we would think of as survival situations, is as a community. I mean, we see that with, when we look at the Native American history in North America, even as populations and entire groups were being decimated by these diseases, sometimes 75% of a village in a single winter from a wave or waves of disease. Even in the face of that, they reconstituted themselves as communities.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes multi-ethnic or multicultural communities. I mean, there was a whole variety of ways in which people regrouped, and I think that was the message. And part of the this image of grabbing your bug out bag and heading out to the hills is it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the stockpiling, as well. And so, yeah, when we look archaeologically, we always see communities.
Yeah, and that's something we really try to encourage people to do on this show, where obviously some amount of disaster preparation is not just helpful, but is, I think, kind of morally necessary if it's at all financially feasible for you.
Yeah.
It is absolutely the right thing to do to try to have 2-3 weeks of relatively storable food, some water, some other emergency supplies. But kind of beyond that, as you said, that first 30 days, if you actually want not just to live, but to have, life have any kind of meaning, you have to be thinking in a community-oriented situation.
Yeah. I mean, because ultimately, what's the difference between 2 weeks or 2 months worth of food?
Right.
It's going to be gone. And, you have to come back. One of the things in researching for this book, one of the things I looked at was the history of how we made a living and the history of agriculture. And one of the things that I found was that the last time that humans lived where a significant portion of the population was hunters and gatherers, that is not farmers, there was 1/15 of the current population, less than 500 million people in the world. So even a catastrophic disaster that, reduced us to 85% of, or 15% of the current population, we're still going to have more people in the world than ever lived without agriculture. And so we're going to have to recreate some of these systems. And, agriculture by and large is going to be a community-based system. It's, you can garden on your own, but the way that it needs to work is going to be a collective.
Yeah, and I think we talk a lot about. I actually live with a couple of wilderness survival instructors, and we have about an acre of land, and we do a decent amount of gardening, animal husbandry, and that sort of thing. And it is. I've spent a lot of my life on farms, so I've kind of always had an appreciation for how much work it is. And one of the things we try to talk about on this show regularly is the value of even just having a garden, of things like guerrilla gardening, not because I'm not one of those people who thinks that we need to replace industrial agriculture with individuals tending small gardens. That's not going to work, but because the more you kind of interface directly with the concept of growing food and with working with other people in order to do that, the more prepared you are for any number of things that could go wrong. Even if those things don't involve a crunch in the food supply lines, the connections you make with people doing that sort of work will be more valuable than an extra 2 months of stockpiles, in your food buckets or whatever, your Alex Jones dried food buckets.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely right. And, one of the things that occurred to me looking into the past at some of these, collapses or declines that had happened in the past was that a huge percent of the population was engaged directly in agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
And, here in the industrialized world is typically less than 5%, less than that even in the United States. Most people like me don't engage in it. And, I know something about gardening, perhaps like everybody else, but, I'm not a farmer. I don't really have that collective wisdom. And if I had to do that, probably it's like a lot of other things. When everything's easy, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
When it goes bad, it really helps to know what you're doing. And of course, everything goes bad sooner or later. And so, that's that kind of thing's very important. And I think also there could certainly local systems and some flexible scale would be really important. So I'm also, like you, a proponent of this sort of thing. If we can get everybody to participate in ways that we aren't now, that'll give us some flexibility. What if we do have supply chain problems? Well, we have a number of people in the community that are already doing some of this stuff that could maybe be expanded or get us through this period. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're not like dealing with everyone's caloric needs, it could be as simple as, because of where you're located, when the oranges and other kind of fruits aren't able to come in from a supply line thing, there's a shortage of vitamin C, and then knowing how to make tea out of pine needles or whatever, or what kind of plants have a lot of vitamin C. Even though you're not focused on meeting everyone's, entire caloric needs through small scale farming, but you can deal with a nutrient deficiency or something because you understand your environment a little bit better.
Yeah. And probably quality of life issues too. Yeah. I mean, for, kids and, there's lots of ways you can survive that are pretty miserable.
Yeah.
So you want to try to direct it towards those that are desirable. And I think part of that's having this flexibility, having this knowledge, having a lot of people involved in things. And, one of the things I talk about in my book are ideas of, diversity and inclusion, which we talk about in certain ways now. And often, I think, unfortunately, it's talked about as if it's done to benefit the people that are marginalized and left out only. And while it is partly that, it benefits everybody, of course. I mean, anyone in a business knows, anybody in a university knows the benefits of diversity. In the same way, anybody that's trying to do something understands the benefit of a diverse range of experiences. That's why we make these multidisciplinary teams that go out and do things. It's so that you have this wide variety that can help you keep going.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I really found fascinating in your book, and that kind of made me feel a little bit bad, is I've spent a lot of time thinking about what happened, what was done to, and what also just kind of happened as a result of the way diseases spread when colonizers reached North America. I had never really devoted that much thought to the actual actions that in different indigenous groups took consciously to protect themselves from the spread of diseases. You mentioned the Cherokee in particular in your book. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because that's something, as soon as I read it, I marked that page because I'm like, I need to look up what the studies he's referencing because I don't know anything about this.
Yeah, that, a lot of that stems from the research of some other archaeologists. And they, you're exactly right. We don't think about that. We're not taught about it that way. We sort of have this contradictory and sort of doubly problematic way of talking about this. First, for a long time, we denied sort of the how traumatic and how much of a genocide it was when Europeans arrived. And then after denying that, we sort of say, well, Native Americans are gone and no longer relevant, so we can cease to talk about them. Of course, that's not true. And one of the things that we see when we look more in detail at the histories, or we listen to the oral histories, or we look at the archaeology, is that there are a number of things that that people did and do to create the outcomes that they want. And that was no different for the Native American groups. They had ways of dealing with disease, and some of them will be able to understand it via our sort of our system, right? Isolating people, cleanliness, minimizing contact, especially with sort of problematic groups like the colonizers. But in other ways, there are things that are going to be unfamiliar to us. and we're not going to see the effectiveness or the value in it. But one of the things that all of these things did, that these groups were doing, was created or maintained group identity and cohesion, and allowed the perseverance of community. And so there are, it's easy to think about people as sort of passive victims of something, especially when it serves your purpose to think about it in these ways. And we just see that it's not the case.
Yeah, there was a remarkable moment in the book, and I think it was from when you were in Honduras, where you talk about you're finding pottery sherds, and they have these specific kind of markings on them from, I don't know, like 1,000 years ago or so. And you also know a local woman who's a potter, and she's putting the same markings on. And you ask her why, and her answer is like, well, because the pottery sherds that we find from our ancestors have those on them. And my initial thought was like, oh, what a shame that she doesn't know what those originally meant. But then I thought like, well, but is that any different from like all of the different things that I do, because they're traditions, because like they're things that like people 1,000 years ago in my line did? Like, no, it's not. Like it's just what people do, and it is a continuation, and it's a very that's survival, that's conscious survival.
Yeah. And in that case, of course, whatever it meant initially, it now means that to her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's the meaning,
mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting. One of the things, I'm from, and I live in Kentucky, and one of the things, especially when people come to say Appalachians, they're looking for sort of authentic Appalachian Kentucky.
Sure.
And they already have an idea of what that is. And if you don't see it, because that's not really what people do, then the response is never, oh, my ideas about what is authentic might be erroneous. It's, oh, I wonder why I didn't see authentic Appalachians.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you did, but there's going to be more hip hop and punk groups than there are bluegrass groups, because, these are 18, 20-year-old kids. That's, they're doing this as much as this other stuff, and, more probably. And so that is something that I think of often as an archaeologist. My focus is in the past, but if I'm going to understand things, of course, you also have to understand how are people thinking about it in the present, and how am I thinking about it in the present? Because, everything, all the stories I tell about the past are coming out of my experience in the present too. And it's hard to separate those. And really the best we can do is try to, reflect on that and see, how is it that I might be limiting my understanding because of my particular experience?
And one of the things I really like about your book that I also found fascinating. So I for a while did conflict journalism, and before when that was just an ambition of mine before I started to do it, I would see the articles that were being written by all these war correspondents, and I would just be in awe of like, how did they get that story? How did they get that access? How did they must have put so much work in. And then when I actually got there, I realized like, oh no, they made a contact with a local who was good at it, and that person showed them around and made all these connections. And like, actually none of this work happens without these local fixers. And you make the point that in archaeology, you're not generally discovering things. Like even when you're finding shipwrecks, it's because these sailors who lived nearby were like, well, yeah, a bunch of shipwrecks over there. This is where you're going to go find them,
It's always the way it is, They're, in the example you're talking about, I was part of this project in Forni in Greece, which, made the news because we found so many shipwrecks there, something ultimately like 50 shipwrecks around this island. And almost all of them were shown to us by local folks, that sponge divers or people that were fishers, or, people that were out on the water all the time. And the few that we found by ourselves, I'm sure people knew about them. We just stumbled on them before somebody had a chance to show us. It's the same way in Honduras, when we would be walking through the rainforest, and, maybe we'd been walking for a week. So we're way out in the middle of this place. People were constantly telling me, the guys that I was with would say, okay, if we go up this creek, for about 6 hours and we go over here, here's what we'd find. Here's what we'd find over here. Here's what we'd find over here. They knew where everything was. And that's, one of the things that you learn is, how reliant you are on people that live in a place. I mean, they just know it.
Yeah, there's no when you get right down to it, as obsessed as we are kind of in the Western canon with the idea of lost cities, that's not really a thing that tends to happen. Yeah.
No, it's not. And in fact, most of the archaeological sites that people didn't know about, it was just because they were so small and ephemeral that no one really paid attention. Anything. Yeah, there's no lost city. They're always known to somebody.
Well, Chris, I think that's most of what I wanted to get into in this conversation. I'm wondering, before we kind of close out, because you are both the author of this book, The Next Apocalypse, which is, I think, a fascinating way of looking at the idea of things falling apart, and a wilderness survival instructor. If you're going to suggest people, a practical kit bag to prepare for short and kind of long-term problems, what are you putting in your bag?
Well, there's the two main things that you're always going to want is a knife, because that allows you to make a lot of other things, and a way to start fire. And we've all seen in the movies rubbing sticks together and, friction methods, and that works.
Yeah.
And you can do that, but it is incredibly difficult to do.
It's a pain in the butt.
And for most of us that don't do it all the time, you're just not going to be able to do it when it's 40 degrees and raining and you really need a fire. You'll be able to do it when it's 100 degrees and dry, because everything's about to catch on fire anyway. But, and what would that look like? Well, you need something that will catch on fire pretty quickly. And the thing I always take is cotton balls. If you take cotton balls and a disposable lighter, or one of those fire starter sticks that'll make sparks, those cotton balls will catch fire instantly. And if you take one and you coat half of it with petroleum jelly, then not only will it catch fire, it'll burn, for, a minute or so, long enough to catch other stuff on fire. So, making fire and having some sort of cutting tool are the very basic things. But, beyond that, I would say, clothing or some sort of shelter is the other thing. Exposure to elements will kill you quicker than anything. And so having some way to protect yourself, and that's usually going to be, first line of defense is going to be your clothes. And one of the things that you'll know, anybody that deals with sort of survival situations, is that most people that really get in trouble with things like hypothermia, it's not when it's 30 degrees below and they're out doing something. It's when it's 50 degrees and sunny and they're out in a t-shirt during the day, and then at night it drops to 30 degrees and they're stuck out somewhere without proper clothing. That is when things get really dangerous. So, I would say, if you can have some way to start fire, some sort of knife, and appropriate clothes for spending the night out, then you're probably in pretty good shape for most situations.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for talking with us today. Chris Begley, underwater archaeologist, author of The Next Apocalypse, The Art of Science and Survival. Chris, is there anything else you'd like to say or kind of get into before we close out for the day?
No, just thank you very much for reading the book and for reaching out to talk with me, because I think that, especially now as we go into sort of an uncertain future. I mean, the future is always uncertain, I suppose, but as we're really recognizing some of these challenges, I really am hoping that this sort of community-based idea becomes the way we think about things. It doesn't mean it's easy or that we're going to like it. It doesn't mean that that's what I want. I mean, tell you the truth, I would love it if it was just me out in the woods with my family. I can do that. It's much harder to be part of a community and make things work for a big group of people, but that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah. And that's ultimately the way in which you have a lot more real security. Because I think people, I don't know, the world seems so complex and messy that it's easy to imagine that safety comes from getting away from the world. But historically, that's just not how it works.
No, the world finds you.
Yeah.
It's the best. Being part of a group is always best, and your little group can never defend against the big group. I mean, if we want to put it in those terms, you can't just hoard everything, and just doesn't work. Might work for a little while, but so that for me, that's the message I'm hoping people take from that.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. For those of you listening at home, again, please do check out The Next Apocalypse, The Art and Science of Survival by Chris Begley. That's going to do it for us all today. Chris, thank you again, and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, Rob.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveler said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom-loving and different perspectives, and I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the 6th Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the 6th Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Oh boy, it could happen here. That's the name of the podcast. And I'm Robert Evans, the guy hosting the podcast. Who else is with me? Is it Garrison?
Hello, good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever.
Garrison Davis?
Yep.
Not yet a Dr. Garrison Davis?
Not yet. Soon to be Dr. Garrison Davis,
We'll
but
see.
that's a story for another time.
I don't know if you're going to pass the exam that I know you're going to have to pass in order to get through this class, but
sure.
It's a little teaser for the future. Speaking of the future, this is a podcast about the ways in which the future is going to be real fucked up and ways in which maybe we could try to make it less fucked up. And today we have on a guest, Mr. Calvin Norman, who posted a thread on our subreddit with the very simple, very unsettling title, "The Woods Are Bad." And Calvin, you want to introduce yourself, your credentials, and what you were trying to get across in that thread? Because I found it very affecting.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. So my name's, like you said, Calvin Norman. I work in forestry. I've worked in forestry for a while now. I used to be an industrial forester in the Great Lakes region, so like Wisconsin, Michigan. Then I worked in the Southeast. I did my master's down there, and now I'm in the Mid-Atlantic. So I've kind of been around the eastern United States. I haven't gotten out west yet, and I'm a certified forester, or candidate certified forester. I got like a year left on that, so been around. I also do wildlife stuff. It's pretty fun.
And yeah, your thread, what I found interesting about it, I have a good friend who is in forestry, or was in forestry at least, and got their degree in that. And we were out hunting in the Cascades a little earlier, or a little later last year. And there was this wonderful moment. We'd been following a game trail up like this steep hillside, and there was kind of a clearing where we were, a clear cut, but there's deep brush all around. And we get to the top of this thing, we look out and we just see, these rolling mountains of the Cascades, all covered in this lush, beautiful greenery, all these pine trees and everything. And my friend says to me, "It's going to be totally different in 20 years. It's already a different forest than the one I grew up with." And that is kind of the Cliff's Notes of what you're getting into a lot of detail here. And I'm wondering if you could just kind of start on that, explain kind of what's actually happening in our woods, or at least the woods that you're comfortable talking about here. It's a big continent.
Well, yeah, it is a big continent, and you have a pretty good international base. And I can't speak for the Europeans or the Canadians. There's a whole different ballgame over there, and tropical stuff is just wild.
Yeah.
Really cool, but wild stuff. So mainly talk about the U.S., mainly eastern United States. So if you look at the eastern United States, this is a forest that has never existed before in the history of the United States. Prior to like 1920, our forest was like, depending on the source you read, between 20 and 50% chestnut with other species mixed in there. And now we have a mainly oak-dominated forest. And we lost all of our chestnut due to chestnut blight. Out west, you're got a couple of other things going on, but fire suppression has just changed the forest there. Same here on the East Coast and in the Midwest. You used to see a lot more fires going through. I mean, some of that was lightning strikes, but no doubt a lot of it was, intentionally set by the First Nations and the people before the people that we think of as the First Nations. And, that has mainly disappeared except for the Southeast, where fire has never really stopped being in the ground, which is really cool. But even their species composition has changed dramatically. A lot of what we're seeing is, changes in human management, but there's also a number of invasive species that have changed things, like chestnut blight, emerald ash borer, Asian longhorn beetle is coming in. Those are just the pests. The understory and, plants is a whole different ballgame. It's all not great. It's all not great. I was talking with some colleagues at an agricultural show right before I posted that, and we were talking about how the woods were bad. And we very easily laid out a scenario where we lost the most of our remaining dominant tree species. It was not at all hard to do. It took about 2 minutes. So not great. And then the West Coast, things aren't great either.
And when you're talking about losing these species and stuff like the chestnut blight, where is that coming from? How much of that is sort of as a result of, climate change? Like we're having a lot of tree species have trouble here in the West because of how much hotter the summers are and how much drier things have gotten. So how much of what you're seeing where you are is because there's been changes to the climate, and how much of it is, I guess kind of like globalism, like people bringing in pests and bringing in blights and stuff from other areas, and it spreads like wildfire?
Well, I think that we're just starting to see the beginning of climate change, like driving species, up the mountain, or off the mountain out west, and here, out of certain regions. As things are getting hotter and drier, or as climates are becoming more extreme. Here in the Mid-Atlantic, we had one of the wettest years on record. I think it was like 5 or 7. Whereas in the Midwest, they had droughts, but before that, we had 2 years of drought. So it's more extreme, and that's just starting to take part. But the extinctions and near extinctions have been mainly due to non-native pests, and that's just most of it right there. Just because we haven't really seen the start of climate change.
Yeah,
but it's impacting diseases. So like out west with the mountain pine beetle, you're seeing more generations of mountain pine beetle come through. I was just doing a presentation for some folks in South Dakota, and something like a third of their total forest was impacted by mountain pine beetle.
Jeez. And what is that like when you actually talk about these beetles coming in? That's the kind of thing that even as we've gotten more comfortable talking about sort of the different kind of collapses spawned by climate change, I think that we tend to imagine more spectacular things, these giant sweeping fires that burn through huge chunks of states and these huge like environmental calamities. What is this like? What happens when one of these beetles hits a forest? One of these beetle species, obviously not like a singular beetle. Like what is actually like? How quick is the effect, and what kind of comes after that? Like I know there's sort of a shockwave. It's kind of like a bomb going off. I'm interested in kind of tracing the root of that explosion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it depends species to species. Chestnut blight was really fast, and it just seems to have torn through the chestnut native range. So chestnut went from Florida to Maine and out west, like Tennessee kind of area there. And it just, in like something like 15 years, the entire species gone. Emerald ash borer has taken a little bit longer. It got here in the 80s, started kind of going off in the mid-2000s, and it's killed a couple of billion trees. So when that hits a small forest, if it's a pretty beetle that kills pretty fast, like emerald ash borer, it gets into your trees. It starts with 1 or 2, and then within 4 or 5 years, it's in most of them in a forest. And then with emerald ash borer, they're dead in 5. Hemlock woolly adelgid is pretty similar. It'll just show up one day in a stand, and then the hemlocks are dead within 5-7 years. And sometimes what's going on, because emerald ash borer has very clear signs, and other times you don't know what's going on because the tree canopy is so tall, and all of a sudden trees are getting thinner and thinner, and then they're dead. Or you have pests like oak wilt, and that trees are dead, in 2 months, and then it spreads out like a circle. It kind of exactly when you see like a bacteria like growth medium with the bacteria spreading out. That's how oak wilt spreads, and it's just like trees are dead, 2 months, and they spread out and out and out. It's scary sometimes.
Is there anything that can be? I mean, it sounds like with most of these cases, like with what's happened to kind of like the chestnuts, and it's too late for a lot of that. Is there anything that can actually be done to stop this? Like, I know we have all these structures in place to try to stop the spread of invasive species, but like once they're in there, it kind of seems like usually we're fucked.
Yeah. Yep. That would be
okay.
fair. Yeah.
Cool.
Once you get past it, like there's what's called the invasive species establishment curve. So it's an S curve. And once you get once it starts ticking up, it's like, oh, well, we're done here. So let's start thinking about the future. And as you lose more species, it's like, oh, what do we do here? Or if you're like, in the case of ash, it's like this ash is going in a swamp. I have nothing else that's going to grow here. So now I just have an open wetland. Like I can't grow any native trees here. We're done. So the biggest thing is prevention. Like don't bring invasive species in or non-native species in. I was talking to a lady a couple of weeks ago, and she has hemlock woolly adelgid on her property, and she brought in a biocontrol, or what she assumed was a biocontrol from Japan. It's a beetle, and released it. Yeah, in this case, it was one that had been tested and failed because it doesn't make it through the winter. But stuff like that, it's like just don't do that. I appreciate the thought there, but don't. with some of these species, we have, like hemlock woolly adelgid, we have pesticides that work really well, and you apply them only to the tree. And so it's like, all right, I treated this tree. This tree's good for 7 years. Some of them, like emerald ash borer, you're done. There's just nothing you can do. So, yeah, it's prevention. And then you can quarantine, but then it's like, this county's done. So we're going to just try to make sure that only this county dies.
Oh, jeez. You mentioned a bit earlier, like thinking about the future. What does that actually look like when we hit a situation as we have with a lot of these species? We're like, all right, well, this shit's we ain't stopping this. What do people like you do next? Like, what is the next kind of step for the forests, or is it just sort of a smoke 'em while you got 'em kind of thing?
Sometimes it's smoke 'em while you got 'em. So like beach bark disease is going through just roasting beach in the East Coast, and it's going to the Midwest. And so there, it's kind of like, well, if it's in there and your beach are dying, take them out. And if they're not, don't. It's 99% fatal, but there's 1% that can make it. So, like maybe we find that 1%. Emerald ash borer is 99% fatal, but I've seen, in the past couple of years, I've seen 2 that made it. So, like, if we don't cut them all, maybe some will survive.
Yeah, theoretically, we could then like clone or breed or whatever the trees that live, and in a few generations have more of them. If other shit doesn't happen.
Yeah, the chestnut project's been going on for the last 100 years, and it looks like it'll take another 40 more. That's a controversial opinion. Some people say it's faster than 40, but
tell me about
100
that.
years. Oh, the Chestnut Foundation? Really, it's a really neat thing. So there were some chestnuts that were found resistant and some planted outside the range of chestnut blight. And so the ideas were they slowly started back breeding. So they crossed in Chinese chestnut, which is resistant to the blight, which is native to China and East Asia. And so they crossed them in with the remaining chestnut with the hopes of, kind of eventually breeding out the Chinese, but just maintaining the American chestnut and just getting that gene in there. And so they started that back in like the 30s and 40s when they realized what was happening. Well, today is 2022, and we are still without, American chestnut in the forest. There are some backbred versions that are more resistant, but they will still get infected. I've been to a couple of chestnut nurseries where they're doing experiments, and it's sad because they'll get up and then they'll die. They'll get up and they'll die. And it's like, oh, there's 2. Look, there are 2 over there in the corner that made it. And those get, onto the next one. But there is some work out of New York, SUNY in New York, where they altered a chestnut and they put in, they just changed the gene. So the, version that the gene that makes chestnut blight resistant is in that, and that's getting approved by the EPA, FDA, and USDA. Hopefully that gets approved. If that gets approved, we get real further along, because the resistant trees are not the same as the American chestnut. The resistant trees they're shorter and more shrubby, and they don't fulfill the overstory canopy role that chestnut used to play. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is you're like butternut, which was driven to functional extinction at the same time, and we're just nowhere on that. Purdue's working on some stuff, but it's nowhere. They're not in the woods.
Now, how much of because I tend to roll my eyes pretty hard when we're talking in particular about climate change, and people are like, well, I think that science is going to save our asses from this one. We're going to develop some like miraculous carbon capture method, and like at the last minute we'll be able to reverse everything and it'll be fine. I tend to roll my eyes at that, but this, and maybe I'm not, obviously I don't understand this at nearly the level you do. Is this kind of a thing where if there's hope for a lot of these species and a lot of these biomes, it's going to be in stuff like we figure out how to hack these trees to keep them alive? And like, is that really kind of where we are?
I know some very good tree geneticists and tree breeders, but I don't think that they have the capabilities of, coming up with trees that are resistant to all of the various fungi and bugs that are out there. And even if they do, it's, you have to get them out into the woods. You have to plant, we have like 740 million acres of forest. You got to get them out into the woods. You have to have the nurseries to get them out. There's, even if you were able to create trees that were resistant to all of these pests, it would be impossible. So no, the only answer is don't do climate change. And to the carbon capture perspective, the only machine that's going to capture the amount of carbon we need are trees. Yep. I do forest carbon stuff, which is a whole different episode.
I'm extremely interested in that, because obviously, like we've been supported by a couple of companies who, like, one of the things they do to try to be nice is they'll plant trees and stuff, which is not useless, but also a lot of people think that that's what rebuilding a forest is. And like, no, forests are a huge part of the problem with why the West is so flammable is we chop down all these trees and we grew back just the trees to chop them down again. And that turns out to not be resilient at all to anything because trees do not live on their own ever.
Yeah, that's why it's a forest. It's not just trees. Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah. No, it's, yeah. Planting. There's not the infrastructure to plant our way out of climate change. There's not the land. It's just impossible. And so even if there were the infrastructure and the land, we don't have the time because trees take time to grow. They work on a different time scale than humans do. Even your shortest lived tree is 60, 80 years.
Yeah, and it is one of those things where we have this is what we kind of started this new season, which is forever with, which is that like. There's nothing we can do that will stop us from continuing to face worse and worse like consequences of climate change because the carbon's already been emitted, right? You can't just pull it out. Warming is going, even if we were to like make very revolutionary changes tomorrow, there's still some degree to which it's going to get worse. But when it comes to like within your field, what like carbon capture using trees and stuff, can you talk to us about like what that actually looks like as opposed to sort of the we'll plant a tree for every dollar you spend kind of thing?
So yeah, I actually can. I do a lot of my work about carbon, forest carbon stuff. So yeah, basically the idea is to make sure you have the best way to get carbon sequestration of the forest is to have a healthy, functioning forest. And that's, kind of where these pests and climate change are interfering with that. And so, to maintain a healthy, functioning forest on the East Coast, some of these you need to have fire, some of them not. Some of them are too wet to burn. And then, harvesting needs to take place in some of these. Some of these don't need to be harvested. Again, we're talking, millions of acres of, forest here, so we're going to be incredibly broad. And we got to keep invasives out. You need to keep forest pests to a minimum, and then make sure that you're managing the forest, as best as it can be managed. And I say managed, this is not something new. Humans have been on the East Coast since, it depends on the artifacts you want to look at and what archaeologists you want to trust, but like 25 to 20,000 years ago, and the last glaciers left the East Coast 18,000 years ago. So we had people here before the glaciers were gone. So these forests have never not had humans' hands on them and never not been touched and managed by humans. And, we got to make sure we're doing the best we can. Some of that means that we're managing forests with what's best for that means managing forests for what's best with the forest in mind, not what's best for the end of the quarter, what's best for your, bank account. That's hard to do because forests are getting more and more expensive to manage and to, manage sustainably. Here on the East Coast, we got to do a lot of fencing. We got to keep deer out of forests because their populations are so high. It's just ridiculously high, and they're never going to come back down. We have to spray invasive species. We have to pull invasive species. You got to go through and you got to make sure, you're preventing all those kinds of stuff. And so it could take, you can, if you do a good shelter wood, you can like make $40,000 out of it, and then you could put all of that money back into growing your next generation of forests. So forestry is really going from a profit-making venture in a lot of cases to like you're barely making money, or you're like breaking even or losing money. It's no longer, if you really want to do it great, you're not always making money, which is hard for people to get their head around.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that in a reasonable world, huge amounts of money would be diverted to from other things, like I don't know, F-35s. I feel like you guys could do a lot with one F-35 worth of cash.
I feel like that would solve almost all of our problems, yeah. Because the problems that you see in forestry don't cost a lot to fix, but it costs a lot for a forest owner, be that, an agency or a person. It costs a lot.
Yeah, it's like all of the issues around climate change kind of all circle around like growth-based economics. And a lot of like nothing has a shared root cause, but they all have this similar aspect to them where, every part of them gets worse by the extreme focus on economic growth at all costs. And that suffers, that makes everything and everyone suffer. So, it would be nice if, since we have a government, it would be nice if they would, give more funding towards stuff like this type of forest management, which I know they do some, but a fraction of it compared to what they give to like the Pentagon or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Even big, forestry is technically agriculture, but even like like corn and like row agriculture gets a lot more.
Yeah, corn has massive subsidies compared to everything else.
Yeah, like the NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, they do a lot with farm agriculture, and it's very difficult for forest owners to get that kind of money into forests. If we could get that money, it would be a game changer, but we're not there. There is some change being made in the administration, but that's like 2022, 2024 stuff, and that doesn't help. Doesn't help today. It doesn't slow down pests today. You can't unkill trees.
Yeah.
I guess, is there anything that you're optimistic about within your field right now? Like, if you, I think that would be handy, both in terms of like, is there any sort of, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Because I'll admit, like, when I think about not having the forests, that's pretty much the most black-pilling thing I can imagine, like, for myself. Like, that's the thing that I have trouble coping with emotionally more than anything else. There's lots of horrible things about what's coming, but that's the one that, like, really scares me the most.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to lose forests as a thing. They're just going to become, if without things being done, they're going to become less. They're going to be fewer of them, and they're going to become much less diverse and functioning.
Yeah.
For a lot of these, invasive species, be they plants, especially invasive plants, we know how to control them. I was just writing a thing about controlling wavy leaf basket grass. It's a new invasive species to my area. It's highly controllable, and we know how to do it. It's just, again, a question of people, getting out there and money to do it. If we have the people and the money, we could solve that problem. Oh, also, if we stop, bringing that in, that'd be even better. We, actually took, IPM, not IPM, but quarantine and pest management seriously, and, people, like, stopped throwing their local, like, plant out into the park just because, like, I don't want to kill it. Like, let's let it be free. Don't do that. Goldfish, don't throw them in the lake. That's why you have huge goldfish coming out of Lake Florida. Don't just cut pets loose and stuff like that. If we could get a lot of that under control, we'd be in a lot better place. I don't think the forests are disappearing in the future unmanaged. I think they just become fewer, less diverse, and less functioning. Yeah. And then you lose species based on them, like birds, wildlife, all that kind of stuff.
And also, I mean, one of the things that also they have to become less accessible, both because there'll be less of demand as things get more fragile. Like, how else do you keep some of these invasive species out, but keeping people out, which is, I think, a bad move for a lot of reasons. But I don't know. I also don't know, like, is it possible to have a global society where there is not just trade, but the movement of people on a wide scale and not have this kind of shit crossing, right? Like, that's when I think about, as someone who's more or less an anarchist, when I think about the only things that a border should exist to do, it's keep stuff like that out. But I don't know how possible that is. Like, a lot of this stuff is, I mean, is this the kind of thing that's just spread by carelessness? Because it kind of seems like it can be spread too by people who think they're taking care.
Yeah, both is the answer. There's some very good research out there about the relatedness between global trade and invasive species. But that also, you look at like colonialism and colonial societies. There were these things called introductory societies. Oh, I'm getting the name wrong. But basically, they're clubs. It's like, all right, I would like clubs of people like, I would like to see this new place that I live in, like the old place. Like the European starling was introduced in New York because one guy wanted to see all the birds of Shakespeare in America.
Jesus Christ!
Oh, I got an even better one for you. The moth, formerly known as gypsy moth, that's the only time I'm going to say that word, is now found in America because of this one guy. I'll put the name in the chat for you so you can say it, because I know how much you love saying French names.
Oh, ha ha!
Yeah. This guy's one of the most French names
Leopold Trivelo.
Here comes a wave of comments about our anti-French racism.
Oh, no.
This guy
deserves it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know. It doesn't matter. We still get the...
Okay, well,
which nobody does about my Italian accent.
No,
bafflingly.
it's just the French. It's just the French.
Once again, the Italians deserve it as well.
Yeah. No, please tell us about Etienne.
Yeah, so this guy, he's a French scientist who left France. He came to the U.S. for a little while. He hung out in Massachusetts, He was also an amateur entomologist.
Oh, boy.
And he was like, oh, you know what I think America needs? Is I think they need a silk industry. Now, they have a native silk moth that doesn't produce good silk and it doesn't breed fast. So he brought in the Lemaitre. I got to do the scientific name because we changed the name on it because the common name is a slur. So we're not doing that.
Yeah.
So Lemaitre dispara. So he brought this moth in from Europe. And he started trying to breed these two moths, which are not related at all. It didn't work, obviously. And then he just kind of, he went off to be an astronomer, and he just let these moths go in his backyard. And he didn't tell anyone they were there. And then all of a sudden, these things escaped, and now they're killing trees, across the eastern United States, and they're in Washington, Oregon. I think they're in BC a little bit too.
Great.
Yeah. So
That's such a good parable, like a parallel to the invasive species that is French people. That
Yeah.
really does just tie up all aspects of that. Yeah, amazing.
It makes me think a lot, everything you're saying about kudzu, which is in the, I've heard some people say they're getting a handle on it. I don't know how to evaluate that at the moment, but when I was last living down there, it was just like devouring the entire Southeast.
Yeah, you can handle it again if you want to spray it. Or
Yeah.
you could get what's called a chew groove, so a bunch of goats. You can get a handle on it, but again, that's money and effort. So it's just a question.
Although
of
you do get delicious goat meat.
Oh my gosh! I tell you what, the people who do goat invasive management, they have it made. What they do is they rent goats out to people. They get paid for the goats, and they also get their goats fed. So when they slaughter them, they didn't even pay. That's a good business model.
As someone with a couple of goats, that does sound like the dream.
Yeah.
Oh God.
They don't work on all the invasive species. There are folks.
No, they probably don't eat those beetles, huh?
No. They also don't like plants with thorns on them either.
No.
So.
And it's very few goats can handle an entire French person either. So really, yeah, we can't trust the goats to solve all these problems for us. It is nice that they're helping. I don't know. So I try to. Are there things? Either in terms of like acts people can take, or probably more realistically, organizations people could support that you think are actually helping try to stop as much of the woods from going bad as fast, or reverse the some of the stuff we've been talking about today. Like how can we try to have some room for people to do something if there is anything people can do other than check your fucking shoes for beetles when you come back from wherever. Burn all of your clothing anytime you leave the state. Okay?
That's a good start. That's a really good start. Not even the state. Sometimes it's the county.
Mm-hmm.
Go one county.
Stop when you go on a road trip. You stop your car at the county line and you roll it off of a cliff. Fill it with tannerite and just let it burn.
But don't push that into the woods. We've seen how that.
Not
works
into
out.
the
That's
woods.
real bad.
No, into the ocean where everything's fine.
Yeah,
that's what they say about the ocean.
Hey,
going great.
I tell people I work between the farm field and the stream. I don't do stream or water stuff because there's chemistry in there, so I don't know what happens over there.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. I assume everything is great there.
It does seem to be going fine.
I think the best thing that you could do as an individual is don't cut random stuff loose. Learn the plants of your area.
Yeah.
Just, learn what's around you and what should be there. And when you see something that shouldn't be there and you know it's an invasive, remove it where legally possible. Obviously, don't go into someone's arboretum and start pulling plants out.
No,
that'd be real bad.
Burn down small farms wherever you find them.
Yeah. Oh man, the egg people would not be happy about that.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say anything. So I think learn plants, trees is neat. And then if you if you're thinking about how can you help manage forests, lots of people either own forests or know people who own forests, and encourage them to get a forest management plan or a land management plan and get that. And then also, if you got a lawn, rip your lawn out again where possible and use native plants. I do some some lawn change stuff, and it's just frustrating the amount of lawns out there. It's one of these reasons we're losing so many birds, and we have fewer birds and bird species because they can't eat grass.
Mm-hmm.
These things eat fruits and insects and seeds, which you don't get in grass. So, if you don't own a forest, that's fine.
And I'm a huge advocate of that. I try to be on the show. And people, again, we always get this thing where there are people who will critique when we talk about some of these small scale solutions. It's like, oh, turning your lawn into a a permaculture garden with local species isn't going to like produce enough food to feed your family. It's like, no, it's not about that. If you could get a couple of thousand people to do it and they convince another couple and like so on and so on and so on, then suddenly if you're increasing significantly the amount of carbon sequestered by that lawn and you're also making a better habitat for birds and whatnot, that scales. That is a thing that scales. If we got a significant number of people with lawns to replace them with something like we were talking about, fucking kill that grass that almost certainly isn't fucking native to your area, plant stuff that is, and try to reintegrate at least your lawn back into the local ecology. If you got 1 million Americans to do a version of that, you that's not an insignificant thing. Yeah. And it is something that you can do.
In a lot of states, there's programs to support it. In my state, there's a program specifically for like changing lawns over. Mm-hmm. And that program is backed up. They are out of money until 2024. They spent it all already. Oh. There's definitely interest there.
Again, give them an F-35. Let them sell it to whoever. Anyone gets it if they want it.
It just goes up on Craigslist. All right.
Yeah, put it on Craigslist.
Cash.
Yeah, give it to the highest bidder.
Yeah. The other thing you could do is go outside, like support your local land management agency. Most of these, like Forest Service and Park Service, they depend on money spent by users. Mm-hmm. So go spend money at the forest. The other thing people can do,
wash your fucking boots first, though.
Oh yeah, definitely that. And don't bring shit in. Yeah. Don't bring your like weird thing in, like your weird plant, because you don't want to kill it.
Your entirely seed-based diet.
Yeah. If you hunt, great. That supports conservation. If you don't want to hunt, you can still buy duck stamps and these other things that support wildlife management. In the U.S., wildlife is funded by the users. So there's people who buy guns and ammo, and who buy archery equipment, and who buy hunting licenses. So if you want to support wildlife, the best thing you can do is buy a hunting license, even if you don't hunt. It's kind of counterintuitive, but it's the core of the North American model of wildlife management.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's also one of those areas when we talk about ways in which theoretically there's room to build inroads between left and right in this country. Conservation and hunting should be one, right? And there are hunters on the right who are actually talking a pretty good, like reasonably about conservation. Like it is an area of shared interest. Everybody likes wild places, so to speak, quote unquote wild. We just talked about how none of them are actually wild. They've all existed with human beings for forever. But like, yeah,
we like the outdoors.
Yes, the outdoors.
Yeah. Well, and what people ask me like, so I hunt. I have my crossbows right over there.
Mm-hmm. Sweet crossbow.
Get a crossbow. Yeah, get here. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, you don't have to get a gun.
I have been wanting to get crossbow pilled for a while now.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't mind getting crossbow pilled myself.
Yeah,
get a shoulder holster for a crossbow. There we go.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Oh, that's dope.
Get a crossbow.
Yeah.
No, this is not a super expensive one, but it's pretty much a rifle.
Yeah, I mean, ballistically, at the ranges you use them, there's not any meaningful difference, really.
Yeah, and if you're a person who doesn't like guns and doesn't trust yourself around them, they're very safe. Mm-hmm. So yeah, get you one of those if you want. It's a fun time.
Crossbow.
I also like it a lot more than my my guns because it doesn't recoil. But that's enough about that.
Well, that's great. Is there anything else you wanted to get into, Calvin, before we kind of roll out today?
You touched on forest carbon stuff. That's a whole a bunch of stuff on that. That's a whole other world.
I am interested in talking more about that, but perhaps we should dedicate an entire thing. I mean, we should definitely dedicate an entire thing to that. It's an incredibly important subject.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to say about how different indigenous groups have been, like up in the Northwest in particular. We have a lot of kind of tribal efforts at stuff like not just with the forest, but also with like the coastline and whatnot, and rebuilding certain populations along the coast.
In the Midwest, Menominee does a great job with forest management. I'm actually doing a webinar thing about one of our forest pests, and we're having them come talk about their management. Well, we invited them. I'm not actually sure if they're going to do it yet, but the practice we use is based on what they use out there. So, yeah, it's really cool what various First Nations do. It's super great.
Yeah.
I just want to plug trees.
Yeah.
Trees are neat. Learn your
They're
trees.
fucking dope. My favorite type of tree, probably the redwood. I used to live in Arcata, go running in them every day. I know that's kind of a cliche answer. What's your favorite tree?
This is one behind me here. No one can see my background. It's white oak. You can't make bourbon without white oak. So, yeah, white
that
oak.
is an important
also,
tree.
forest products are like one of the only things that supports forest management. So, and it supports forests. So don't be afraid to use, sustainably managed wood and wood products.
Mm-hmm. Find a
It's
good
a
bourbon
perverse system,
company.
but it's capitalism.
And drink a shitload of bourbon. Always a good call, really. All right. Well, Calvin Norman, any last pluggable to plug?
Plants. If you want to learn plants, that's great. If you want to learn about what's going on in your native, your areas around you, there's lots of groups that do that. Your local extension service helps you out with a lot of that. Most of their stuff's free, so plug that. Yeah, go outside and plug that. I don't do Twitter.
Good. Yeah. All right. Well, go outside, hug a tree. Calvin Norman, thank you again so much for coming on. If you want to see Calvin's original thread, just type in "The Woods Are Bad" and It Could Happen Here Reddit, or just go to the It Could Happen Here Reddit and scroll down a bit. You'll find it. That's going to do it for us today. Until tomorrow, go out into the woods. Go out into the woods. But wash your fucking boots first.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom-loving and different perspectives, and I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the 6th Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to The Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It Could Happen Here is the podcast you're listening to with your ears, or perhaps other parts of your body. If you have, I don't know, some bizarre form of synesthesia that causes you to taste sound, maybe you're tasting us right now, in which case I'm going to open up the flavor bouquet by introducing my co-host Garrison and our guest for today. Why don't you take over now, Garrison? I've done my job.
Great. That sounds lovely. Yeah, hey, Garrison here. It Could Happen Here is the podcast. We have a special guest today, journalist and researcher W.F. Thomas. Hello.
Hello. It's so good to be here on Behind the Woman's Revolution, the Police Insurrection Daily.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
It's lovely to have you. A lot of people say Garrison's voice tastes like sorbet, by the way. It's a comment we get a lot.
Yeah,
a weird amount of times.
A lot of those DMs. You should probably stop that. So we're going to be talking about something I've wanted to actually bring up myself for a while now, but I just have not put the work in. And now, luckily, someone else did the actual work, so we could just talk about it. We're talking about something called Disclosed TV, which is a broad range of things. It's not just one thing. And I guess I'll hand it over to the person who did the actual work in terms of like how would you describe what Disclosed TV is? Before we get into like the journey of the platform and thing, what is it?
Yeah, let me start this off by saying I've already, before the publication of the article, been publicly threatened vaguely with legal action from Disclosed TV. So that will be largely informing what I say today, but we do have a lot of receipts.
And we have very scary lawyers here, so I'm excited. Whatever happens.
So feel free to say whatever you want to say, but Disclosed TV markets itself and presents itself as a news aggregator operating Twitter, Telegram, Gab, Getter. They have a Facebook as well as a main site where they host what one could describe as articles as well.
Yeah, and I think Disclosed TV, for our purposes, despite like they have a very large Facebook presence, but the way that we usually interact with them, specifically like me and Robert, and then other people who are like journalists or just anti-fascist researchers, usually we interact with Disclosed TV on Telegram or through Twitter. Twitter through like it's how they like break a lot of current events in like where like a lot of like political figures talk about them is Twitter, and then Telegram is where they really disseminate these out into more obscure groups. Maybe they change their wording because they know the audience is a little bit different, and they've been a vector of information for a while. Really with the 2020 protests, they kind of picked up a lot of
all over Twitter. Yeah.
They were everywhere in terms of like saying specific things, not doing sourcing, and just having like basically they are a place where they kind of create they try to create what the news is because of how isolated they are from the sources that they actually pull info from, and they're very interested in kind of crafting their own version of events, which appeals to people across the spectrum. Like they don't just market towards the far right wing. Sometimes they frame things to kind of attract a variety of people on like under the extremist banner, let's say. So you don't just see them in far right circles. You see Disclosed pop up in a lot of places because of the way they frame news and breaking events. But they didn't always start out like this. This isn't what they always were. They weren't always this kind of content aggregator that creates their version of news. And Thomas did more research into what they were before, which I actually had not done that research yet. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm going to start off with talking about how I first heard about Disclose. So I was living in Germany when the pandemic hit, and got COVID first wave in Germany in the middle of March. Luckily, I was totally asymptomatic, but I was kind of stranded in Germany for a couple weeks, and had to isolate in a vacation rental. And the Bavarian man who owned it just kept coming and talking to me, and I would tell him, hey, it's probably not the best idea for you to be coming by and chatting with me all the time. And he got into talking, and we're talking in German. We got into talking about the pandemic, what he thought about it, and he started talking about how he thought, oh, the government's making this seem way worse than it is. The deep state, if you know anything about that, and he said deep state in English. And I was familiar with German far-right currents at that time, but I had never encountered a pilled German dude, and that's when I realized this is going to be a fucking problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it, lo and behold, it has continued to be a problem. So as I got back to the U.S., and the other thing when I was in Germany is the first time I encountered Telegram, when a German I knew said, hey, I just don't trust WhatsApp because it's owned by Facebook. Why don't you download Telegram? In 2019, I think. And it was pretty innocuous to me at the time. I didn't realize this would become a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fast forward, I was working on my master's project, which I can talk about more later on because it's kind of besides the point. If y'all want to hear about it, but looking at Telegram as the cultic milieu, using Colin Campbell's framework of the cultic milieu, to understand specifically how QAnon spread in Germany, and how QAnon interacted with these native underlying conspiracy narratives within Germany, because Telegram is already massively popular in Germany.
Yeah.
After J6, I think of the ban wave came down and there was much more migration to the platform. So, I did the social network analysis looking at the German conspiracy scene on Telegram, and one of the biggest nodes that came up, and I was looking at number of times shared into other groups or channels, was Disclosed TV. And that's the first time I came into it. I looked through it and realized, okay, there is an editorial stance within this, and that editorial stance largely attracts conspiracists and far-right extremists to this coverage, and to, this is widely shared among conspiracists and far-right extremists.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I'm on Twitter, as many of us are, unfortunately, and I saw Disclosed TV just popping up everywhere, even from people who I would think should know better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who are, big extremism researchers and journalists, shared it. I remember there one specific one that really came across my feed. Disclosed had taken a video from the Blaze, Glenn Beck's whatever
Media empire,
Glenn Beck
whatever
is doing,
about
the firefighters who were quitting over vaccine mandate or something and had all of their boots or whatever. And I saw lots of people sharing that as well. And eventually I got tired of saying, hey, this shit is suspect, don't share it. And decided to write an article about it so I could just send my article to people. And it's really interesting what I found. Disclosed TV started off in the mid-2000s as just this forum for UFOs, paranormal stuff, cryptids, Bigfoot sightings, and existed in largely the same format until 2021. There were some shifts in the way the site presented itself. It started off as a member login where members could write articles that were largely long form forum posts, and then have people comment on them and reply. And at one point, Disclosed made the jump to functioning as a news aggregator while including an editorial spin on that.
Yes.
And including some of their own articles. Do you want me to get more into that now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the shift was it wasn't immediate as well, right? They were starting to kind of present themselves in more of a news gathering way around the late 2010s. Of course, during 2020, this became a big thing in terms of their social media presence. They were trying to present themselves as like a news aggregator, right? But they still operated the forum on their site throughout most of that time, and it's only until recently where they shut that forum down, which was full of all kinds of conspiratorial nonsense that's very easy to see past for most people.
Secret Arctic shit, which is
always
a red flag.
It's always that's usually a red flag. Yeah,
even getting to get stuff like watch this SJW get wrecked, which is not a quotation, but just that kind of vibe.
That style of content, yeah. Going from the forum operating then with their social media accounts to the shift to this more of like presenting as a news website. Talk about that and the potential effects that we see this having on both like the social media sites and just the overall trend of news aggregation in general, I guess.
Yeah, so the first big shift that I found was the creation of their Telegram channel, which was in January of 2021, actually. So this is relatively
more recent than
shift that happened. And they operated their Telegram as as more in this traditional news aggregator sense. And so that's how they really blew up on Telegram. At some point, they deleted all of their old tweets and started operating their Twitter in a similar manner. It was after they created this Telegram channel. In September, so actually overnight on September 20th of 2021, they completely rebranded the site. They took out all the user forums. They included backdated articles to a year prior. And looking through archives of that, there was a note saying something along the lines of, we have found so much growth on our social media, our growing Telegram channel, our growing Twitter account, and something to the effect of, we are changing our strategy and going about this a different way. And you can, if you were into the forum, you can join our Discord, which is now defunct, and I'll get into that later. And yeah, it was really interesting too, because looking at these backdated articles, they included very obviously plagiarized content. They had, I believe, it's all in the article, but they had 4 journalists' names attached with the article using AI generated images for their pictures.
Yeah.
And especially the articles that they themselves published were very focused on UFOs, paranormal phenomenon, as well as content that could cause skepticism within an audience about vaccines and lockdowns. And I do not know the intent of their editorial board, and so I cannot speak on that, but
of course not.
It generated this effect.
Yes, that is, they found a way of creating content which develops a very specific audience, which grew their numbers, which made them, one could assume would make them want to make more of that content because it makes more numbers and they can use that to grow their platform. Specifically leading up, like after January 2021, ramping up when the vaccines were becoming more and more common in the States and then across the world, they have seen a pretty significant growth and have changed their platform accordingly.
Exactly. So we began looking into who the fuck owns this? What's going on with this? Mm-hmm. Like all German companies, and it is based in Germany, there's a requirement by law to include an imprint or an impressum that includes an address, contact information for the site, and the company that owns it. A company called Future Bytes operates Disclosed TV, which describes itself as a private equity firm and media group. And looking into the ownership behind Future Bytes is a man by the name of Uwe Braun, who has a pretty interesting backstory. He's made numerous web hosting sites, I believe he created some dating sites as well, but my research was not conclusive, so that's a maybe. But eventually he had his most success when he sold one of his web hosting sites to GoDaddy for a lot of money, and along the way, in his own, as he described, booked a flight on Virgin to go into space and see for himself if the Earth was flat.
My God, awesome, cool. This is great. Thank you. Yeah.
So this is who we're dealing with.
Sweet.
And the thing about Disclose being based in Germany, that becomes an issue, is that Germany has a very different look at free speech than in the U.S. For example, even online, displaying swastikas and denying the Holocaust is illegal and is a prosecutable crime that can get you jail time. Mm-hmm. So as we explored, as I mostly, and there's additional reporting from Ernie Piper, and I'll talk a bit more about that later, explored their Discord and their Telegram, we realized, seems to be a lot of Nazis here. And by which, when I say seems to be a lot of Nazis, I mean people with swastikas in their profile builds.
Yeah.
With, names referencing the Holocaust with the whispers parentheses, and saying, denying that the Holocaust happened, and also sharing the infamous neo-Nazi propaganda film, Europa: The Last Battle, which was shared by prominent QAnon influencer Ghost Ezra.
Well. I know. Oh man, this came up a few days ago. One of the channels that me and someone else have been watching forwarded me it being that film being shared at it was at the Free Oregon Telegram channel was sharing links to that, and I wonder, I would like to track back where that link came from. Not great seeing that film circulate more and more, especially among the Free Oregon Telegram channels, like anti-mask, anti-vax, anti-lockdown channel, and seeing the proliferation of that type of content.
Yeah. So, in preparing for this article, with the help of the Logically editorial team, I'm a freelancer. Their current head of content, Ernie Piper, sent an email basically asking, "Hey, what's going on? Y'all seem to have a Nazi problem. That's kind of borderline illegal in Germany." To which, for a while, for about 24 hours, Disclose just went totally quiet and didn't post, and then came out with a post specifically targeting Ernie, by name and with a picture of him and linking to some of his old reporting work, as well, saying, yes, Uwe Braun owns this. He got his money from GoDaddy. We value free speech and we condemn hatred, whatnot, and saying, oh, our Telegram, we have there's a Telegram group, but we have these rules in it, and okay, yeah, we had to shut down the Discord. That got a little bit out of hand. We admit that, they had people denying the Holocaust with swastika icons in their Discord that they didn't seem to care too much about until someone pointed it out. And there was additionally very explicit neo-Nazi content in their Telegram channel as well, with the excuse, oh, well, we're a growing platform. We can't moderate everything as well. They just crossed 400,000 in their Telegram channel, and I think about 30,000 in their Telegram group, which is frankly bullshit.
Yeah, that is.
If my personal opinion is that if you don't have the resources to moderate this space, you probably shouldn't.
Then you shouldn't have the space. Yeah,
the space. And additionally confirming, oh, okay, we when we made our new version of the site, yes, we backdated some articles from previous user-generated content that we, didn't vet properly. We're trying to fix that now. They removed some of those articles, and that, none of the people who are the authors of our articles are real people, and they're all pen names. they also have, or at least had, a tab on their website that said, write for us, and looking for people to send them things and saying, we will disclose your bio and link to all your social media if you write a story for us. And there was zero of that happening as well.
So do you think that, I know like on the rules for their Telegram, they have the no Nazi stuff rule. Do you think they're actually trying to discourage that because they're scared of legal stuff, or is that just presenterary and I guess, this is just going into speculation, so I think this might be more a question for even Robert. In terms of, is the anti-Nazi stuff presenterary, and because it does seem to be a lot of their user base is fostering that type of thing, or is, being moved over from other similar channels? Because, like a lot of, like, the amount that we see disclose, like, intercept with channels like, the Rise Above Movement channel, and a whole bunch of, like, eco-fascist channels, and a whole bunch of channels, on a broad range of, like, actual, like, fascist topics, like, people who are, like, into fascist theory, is quite high, the amount that disclose shows up. And I don't know, like, you could look at all their stuff saying, on their rule page saying no Nazi bullshit. But then if you spend any amount of time looking at where their posts are forwarded, it's almost primarily people who self-describe themselves as fascists. So, I mean, it's hard.
Or Donald J. Trump Jr., who likes to
yes. It expands out into a lot of, just like, American journalists who study extremism can also share disclosed stuff on Twitter, right? That is part of their thing, is making that, and that does strengthen them because it gives them that legitimacy. So then when people point out that they have a Nazi problem, like, no, that's not us, that's just some of our users who are trolling, or whatever bullshit they want to say. So I guess the real way to frame this is like, how often have you seen Nazi stuff associated with the Disclosed TV brand? Because that's the one thing we actually can measure, right? We can't measure their intentions, but we can measure how often this stuff happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's always like the best way to measure that kind of thing, rather than just sort of like making the allegation listing, like, we find it in this many channels, we see it shared in these areas, it's being discussed by these people, and like like that's, I think, always kind of how you actually build these sort of networks, is by looking at what is actually spreading where. Like it is thankfully something that you can measure pretty objectively.
And like they are fostering it with the amount of stuff they talk about, like George Soros, and the amount of stuff that they, like, the way they frame breaking news has that editorial bent where it's very clear that it's getting pushed in a specific direction. Like that is a thing that you can observe by reading the type of narratives they're weaving via how they report information.
The topics that they choose to cover are topics that resonate very deeply with conspiracists and with far-right extremist communities. If I had to speculate, I will say, at least since the article has come out, they've done a better job of moderating their Telegram channel, at least for now. So, good job, Disclosed TV. You can't find links to Europa: The Last Battle there anymore. You can still you can still find very rampant homophobia slurs, because they clearly auto-blocked some words, but people can shorten them or use different spellings for those words to still be used in the channel. There's still anti-Semitic, coded anti-Semitic references as well, responding to something saying "oy vey," for example, which is something that tends to be used by a lot of neo-Nazis and anti-Semites.
Yeah, I mean, and if you do any amount of research on Telegram, you will find forwarded links to this channel everywhere. Like, if it is so massive, the footprint that they have currently in the cycle of forwarding posts specifically on Telegram. And yeah, I mean, they're getting a lot of traction on it because they have stuff framed in a way that's really easy for them to have those stuff like line up with the community's that promote those types of worldviews.
Yeah.
And promote the narratives that they want to foster. So let's see. Let's have another quick break, and then let's maybe talk about your big master's project, which is really interesting.
Yeah, can I do it?
Yeah.
Can I do the you know what isn't Telegram?
Literally these ads, unless we get an ad by Telegram, which
we are primarily sponsored by the Durov brothers, but that's for a separate project.
Great.
My favorite ad is the one where it's the kid playing and they find a gun.
Oh yeah,
that's my favorite.
We're back.
We are. Thanks. Great job. Great work.
I hope everybody enjoyed that kid finding a gun again
and firing it.
Yeah. So
there's one of my favorite tweets recently was like somebody. It was somebody like clipped a screen grab of a news article that was like a toddler has shot someone every day in the United States for the last 3 years, and somebody quote tweeted and said, "Somebody fucking stop him."
It's very good. The last thing I want to talk about is just kind of why news aggregators are bad in the first place, and examples of which we've seen the past few years and how they contribute to disinformation, specifically in how they don't do sourcing for any claims and they try to make themselves a primary source even though they're not. And then also would love to talk about your very fancy project. So, yeah, we saw a lot of news aggregators in 2020 that during the protest specifically, that spawned and killed many a news aggregator account, which did not help things very much.
And this is an issue that strikes across the political spectrum.
Yes. I mean, one of the biggest instances of that would be an account called AnonCat, right? That was what they're called.
I was thinking of.
Yeah. Who, marketed themselves towards the left wing. And I don't know what their intentionality was. They may have had their heart in the right place. I have no idea. And I'm not going to speculate on that right now. But the effect that they caused was damaging to how information's disseminated, specifically in high-stress events. Like, for instance, the Rittenhouse shooting, like stuff like that.
The
big
protests,
accounts.
The demos around that, before that.
Yeah, before that, yes. Yeah. In fostering that very fast-paced, unverified information circulation, that gets a lot of retweets. It gets a lot of eyeballs on it, but it's hard. It makes it very hard to backtrack claims because they do not want to link to other accounts because they're mostly interested in growing their own account. I will say, Disclose has gotten better about linking to the sources, even if the title and the tweet don't necessarily match what is in the story they link to. Yeah,
or at least someone could take a different interpretation from the two.
Yes. So just news aggregation and the way it intersects with disinformation and misinformation, not just a problem for the far right, not just a problem for the right wing, not just a problem for liberals, not just a problem for leftists. This is a thing that anyone can really grasp onto. And some of it's accidental, some of it's intentional, right? There's some people might just do this kind of mindlessly, and some people may, do this aggregation with a very specific intent in mind. So just be very careful whenever you have an account that always leads with all caps, breaking, news. If you have an account that always does that, maybe don't take that account super seriously all the time. Maybe you should find other sources of info that don't always start the tweets with breaking news in all caps.
Or my advice to people, if they do want something like that, find an actual news source. There is plenty of valid criticism to be made against, these mainstream media MSM centrist stuff from even from the left. There's criticism, but you have to find some way of finding your own meaning and understanding of what is going on in the world around you.
I think
AP, CNN, Reuters.
Yeah, and on that point, I think that is part of why I think Disclose can succeed, or what they did can succeed, even when I see stuff shared on the left, even by anarchists, because it is a not mainstream media news source. The way they can frame things of sometimes, rarely, will match up with an actual anarchist views, and they'll be I'm going to share it from this thing because it does feel like an underground source. It's not, you're not sharing a CNN article so you feel better. because instead you're sharing something that is not in the mainstream. So like I get that. I get that pull to not
something that is a disingenuous reading of a CNN article instead.
Yeah, but instead you're not, it's not actually better. It's just marketing. They're just tricking you via aesthetics and branding, and that's all that it is, right? So maybe you should learn to see past the marketing and branding of those types of things and look at the actual content of what's being shared. What is the university project thing that has been taking up a lot of your time?
Yeah, and so I got back in the U.S. and I got interested, especially in looking at the spread of QAnon in Germany, and that led me down this research path, and brought me especially to Telegram. Again, before it was largely used in right-wing circles in the U.S., although the Nazis have pretty regularly in the U.S. been on Telegram as well. But this led me to look at this and especially to look at Telegram in the context of, as I mentioned, Colin Campbell's concept of the cultic milieu, which I don't know if y'all have talked about that on this before.
We have on
is
Behind the
generally...
Bastards a couple of times.
Okay, but
yeah,
to give a quick summary is the concept that there is this space, and when Colin Campbell wrote that, it was in, I believe, the 70s, so it was a physical space where people go to find these rejected narratives, reject the idea of rejected knowledge, and they go to seek this kind of knowledge and these things. So he's talking about things like UFO conferences or meetups, or alternative bookstores.
Or perhaps maybe signing up at an institute to get a degree in metaphysics.
Yeah, as... What a weirdly specific example, Garrison.
Yeah, sorry, I just random thought. Yeah, anyway.
How's that going, by the way, Garrison?
It's going good.
Good.
Yeah, and what you find is people can very easily move between ideologies. And as they move between ideologies, concepts, specific schools, they cross-pollinate these schools. And this is how you get these kind of highly syncretic movements like QAnon, like the modern conspiracy movement, which is incredibly syncretic, and some of the other really bad ones that are out there as well, that combine these different views.
Specifically, when you start combining this type of like cultural mysticism with politics, often you can have very volatile results.
Yes, exactly.
Can you think of any examples?
I mean, in some ways, the modern eco-fascist movement is built on a lot of this type of stuff. So that would be the easiest. That'd be the easiest one.
I think the syncretism of, because I think a lot of people have been surprised to see kind of like natural medicine and whatnot, subcultures and like alien subcultures kind of colliding with QAnon and these like more like far right neo-Nazi type groups, and the fact that there are all of these things that were associated for years kind of more with the left have been increasingly pulled into this sort of weather system of conspiratorial thinking has been surprising to a lot of people who don't understand this stuff, but it makes total sense if you have been paying attention to the scholarship on what is actually like how cults sort of form. Like it's like a weather pattern that's been building for quite a while. There's a gravity to it that sucks everything in together, and it all kind of, it's, as you said, syncretic.
It's interesting because
not to get into horseshoe theory, but this is even how you get some of that crossover, right?
Yes.
That was what I was just going to mention, is that even a lot of like the left-wing authors or, post left-wing authors who got into this like cultural mysticism, you see their texts now getting shared by like open fascists, even though these authors were anti-fascist. They are able to still pick and choose what parts they're writing to appropriate, because some of it can kind of synchronize,
and this
despite them coming at it from opposite ends.
A very long time. Like if we talked about in our Gabriel D'Annunzio episodes, Fume, which was this kind of like where a large chunk of like the fascist intellectual movement got started in the post-World War I period, but also there were like a ton of anarchists and a lot of like left-wing like thought leaders and whatnot were kind of all, it was again kind of, there was this kind of like gravity center that pulled everything in, and it all started churning together. And yeah, we're seeing that happen now. And yeah,
it sucks.
And
that's great. Yeah.
To jump back to Campbell, that's one of those examples of those physical spaces that Colin Campbell was talking about, right? Where it's any place that ideas that are rejected by, the orthodox, kind of the establishment. There is overlap. There is not necessarily ideological overlap, but there is an interplay between them as people move between them and as these ideas come into collision with one another. And with the internet, right? Whole different fucking ball game.
Yeah, because that space is now everywhere.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And Telegram specifically has these specific affordances that make it ideal for having this soup of bullshit on it as well. It's additionally one of, and this may be changing, there's a lot of discussion going on about this, especially within the German government, who could actually, they already have a law that they could use to say, hey, you can't have you can't have this Nazi shit in Telegram. But Telegram is one of these last places where things are largely allowed to spread without any kind of interruption, right? Which I do think, you look at Telegram is used in the Hong Kong uprising as well. It was used for...
It was used in the George Floyd uprising.
Yeah, the George Floyd uprising as well. And it's these same things that attract different people to it. Time is fake. Abolish linear time. But
shoot your clock.
Shoot the fucking clock. But
okay, Zerson, let's get back to the topic.
Yeah, but jumping back into this, Telegram markets itself as this very secure platform. It's probably not, right? It does have.
It's certainly not. No, absolutely not.
It does have encrypted chats, but that's only for one-to-one messaging between people, and even then, you need to go in and make sure that security settings are right. And again, I don't fully trust that.
I don't fully trust. I mean, Signal is about as good as it gets, and I
we
don't fully
barely trust Signal.
Yeah, exactly.
I trust conversations when everyone has put their phone inside a Faraday bag in a house,
and then we walk 2 miles into the woods.
We walked 2 miles into the woods. Then you can have a conversation.
Yeah, but Telegram markets itself as this very secure app, right? Which is largely marketing. Its appeal is that it's not WhatsApp. It's not owned by Facebook.
It's probably worth acknowledging that because it's also very popular with a lot of people in parts of the global South and countries with authoritarian governments, and has been used for a lot of organizing. It can be more secure but also more accessible than any other tool people have access to. I mean, in Syria, it's extremely common for neighborhoods and towns will have Telegram groups for this little village where a lot of stuff gets done over Telegram and places like that.
And Telegram sits in this interesting space between social media. It's not a full-on social media site, but it's also not just a messaging app.
Telegram is a liminal space.
It's kind of hard to categorize. It is an interesting sort of in-between type thing.
Yeah, because you can have essentially unlimited. I think the number is in the hundreds of thousands for how many people can join a group message on Telegram. And you also have these one-way messaging thing called channels where one person or group of people can send out messages that appear alongside everyone else's message feed as well. And you can also enable comments on that, which I'll get into in a second. But it's a great way to share information as well. And what I was specifically looking at is the forwarding of messages, because you can forward a message from this one channel into whatever group chat you're in, and it links back to that channel. And I was interested in seeing how far, what connections can we make from this? What kind of zigzagging can we find? And the answer is fucking a lot. Where someone may use Telegram for example, a neighborhood group message, right? And then someone forwards a message for this channel or for this other group message where they talk about, here's kind of health practices to use. And then you get into the pseudoscience of things crossing into further messages from what's forward groups and channels from what's forwarded into that group and channel, and so on until you get to the neo-Nazis eventually. And it is a concerted effort on the part people pushing their ideology, who will go in the comments of these giant channels and say, "Hey, check out my channel." What's not a real one? Aryan Cooking, which is probably a channel, but
probably is. Yeah, great job.
Sorry, but check out
Yes.
check out this or whatever, and especially when QAnon moved on, a lot of promoters moved on.
God, it was
Telegram.
awful.
There was organized groups of internet neo-Nazis going on and trying to pill boomers into neo-Nazism.
Yeah,
and there still are.
Because of the mesh-like network of Telegram, they try to make those meshes connect via dissemination, right? You can, people who are dedicated to these more esoteric groups can join more regular, like, MAGA groups or QAnon groups and start slowly bringing links to them, start doing links and forwarding to the more extreme channels. And eventually, yeah, that does work. It can be a slow, careful process, or it can be very fast and like bombastic. And it'll, depending on the person, one of them will latch on to one will latch on to the other.
Yeah, and before the article came out, what I did see was the specific thing of accounts that I would associate or believe to be neo-Nazi, encouraging people to join their groups and channels in the Telegram group message as well. And I cannot speak to what that looks like right now after the article has come out. For legal purposes.
And I've been trying to take a break from Telegram for my day-to-day life, and focus on reading actual books. So, but yeah, that is something.
I can always tell when one of us has been spending time on Telegram because the things we consider jokes get much worse.
Yeah.
You remember when I found that playlist of Blink-182 Nazi covers?
Not Nazi covers? It was what?
There was like 100 of them.
Blink 1488 or some bullshit.
Blink 1488.
Yeah.
Neo-Nazis.
You always you can find the most fucked up stuff. Don't do it. Don't scroll on Telegram.
Absolutely do not do it.
You're not going to get. This isn't like coveting the sacred
You don't need
knowledge
to be
or
on
anything.
Twitter, let
It's just
alone
not even
fucking
fun.
Telegram.
Yeah, like it's not even. It's not worth it. Like there's no sacred knowledge that we're hiding. It's just it just kind of sucks. Like it just
makes
sucks.
you feel bad.
Yeah, it just makes you feel worse about life and yourself and the people around you.
So the scope for your master's project, what is kind of what's the deal with like tying these things together, I guess?
Yeah. So using this social network analysis to argue that Telegram does function as this cultic milieu, which I have my master's, which
seems to be the case.
Yeah. And the question gets into what is the responsibility of the platform, right? Because I fully believe there should be something at least similar to this. It has been used for purposes aligned with my politics, and which I would call good and needed. However, they've also allowed this fucking awful ecosystem to spread. It's interesting to see when Telegram has had to step in, and they have pulled down some ISIS accounts and channels, and they have pulled down.
When I was in Al-Hol, which is the camp where all the ISIS prisoners were in Syria, like while Jake and I were in the camp, we could see on Telegram like ISIS supporters in Al-Hol talking about stabbing guards, like in real time. It was not particularly. They've done like a lot. There's less of it than there used to be, but it is still not hard to find ISIS on Telegram.
Yeah, and they've taken down a few amount of neo-Nazi channels. It's funny because, oh god, maybe cut this, but they've taken down some of the neo-Nazi channels when they've shared ISIS shit, for example.
Yeah. I think we're familiar with that line of thing. That's something we've mentioned before.
Okay, cool. There has been pressure from the Play Store and Google as well, or the Play Store from Google and the App Store.
And App Store, Apple's App Store.
From Apple to say, we aren't going to carry the app if you don't do just a tiny bit better, essentially. Which also, it exists as a web client, both as a web client and as a desktop app as well. But that would, limit some of it. So this has become largely discussed in the German parliament, because there's a new government in Germany, and there is this history of Germany kind of is the lead for doing things about this digital content, especially within the EU. And as I mentioned, there's already a law called the Network Enforcement Act that requires platforms to take down content in Germany. That could be implemented on Telegram as well. There's already a law.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing why, what I watch happen lots is, these channels will get shut down and they'll make a new one and they'll shut down that one and make a new one, right? It's this, you see this with like Discord servers, Telegram channels. It is kind of this endless cycle. And seeking an end to the cycle is always not as easy as what one would hope. Because of the cyclical nature of building these platforms and connections and how the people who run these, intersect. And specifically with Telegram, it's really easy because if the channel gets shut down, you're still part of 12 other channels, and odds are one of those channels is going to forward you the link to the new channel that was lost.
And this is a thing you see where they send lists of channels. Within extremist groups and channels, they will send out lists of here's other groups and channels to check out as well.
Yeah, but I mean, so that's something that's, hard for regular people to actually do, but something I think that people who do not own these platforms nor lawmakers can't think about is particularly the cultic milieu that does, go past regular left-right divisions in terms of politics, and how, symbology and stuff that was, initially, perhaps more anarchist or left-wing is being used by people on the right, and some people are really confused by that. And there is ways to understand it. Like I am very frustrated when I look at, people online who don't understand why Nazis can use Ted K. And right, it's like, it's not really about what Ted K actually wrote. It's more the symbolic meme of Ted K. And trying to, get that line of thinking across is not the easiest thing, because sometimes they'll go in the other direction and be like, oh, Ted K is a Nazi, which isn't accurate either. Like that's not also the most accurate thing to say. So it's the cultic milieu framework of being, sometimes these symbols can cross over from one thing to another, and sometimes the action can be the same. Both anarchists and like insurrectionary fascists both want to like attack like industrialization and attack points of industry, right? But maybe their ideologies are slightly different sometimes in specific ways. So it's always a tricky thing to kind of navigate. So I think in terms of, people should think about what symbols they promote, like publicly and stuff, is a good thing, and think about news aggregation and how to maybe not just share something because it's countercultural. Try to figure out what other types of narratives this source is spreading.
Follow real journalists. Support the work of real journalists, because there's a bunch of kick-ass people out there who are doing awesome research and work.
So I think that kind of wraps up the scope of what I want to talk about around Disclose specifically, because I mean, Disclose is a thing, but it's also like, it's good as just like an example to like this broader phenomenon, I think. Because like Disclose won't be here forever, hopefully. Hopefully in a few years it's something that we can just like look back on and laugh about. But it's it's still a good signifier for a phenomenon that happens, and the phenomenon, even if Disclose goes away, the phenomenon's still going to stay. And it's important to point it out when you see whatever the next version of this is. So
and I'll also say that the cultic milieu isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? This is where stuff that is rejected by the Orthodox goes, and completely eliminating any kind of cultic milieu just means everything is exactly the fucking same and falls in line with Orthodox belief, which I strongly disagree with as well.
Mm-hmm.
No, there is a way to be countercultural without being a conspiratorial fascist. I would say
but it takes vigilance and responsibility in what you were consuming and sharing.
Yes, and I would say like most people who are actually counterculture are like actual punk is that, once you're enforcing traditional hierarchical viewpoints, that ain't punk. That is that's playing into what the status quo was. That isn't revolutionary. That
like the living members of the Sex Pistols would disagree with you, aren't they all?
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think we can all agree that having living members of the Sex Pistols was a mistake.
And I prefer Lana Wachowski's version of punk to theirs anyway. So, hey, who cares? So thank you for your work, Thomas. I would recommend people read your article, which you can do by Googling Disclosed TV now. It will be, for me, it's the second result that pops up. So that's cool.
Send it to all your friends and mutuals who are sharing Disclosed TV. You can find it on logically.ai is the website, and the full title of the article is Disclosed TV, Conspiracy Forum turned Disinformation Factory.
Thank you for that. Do you want to direct people to your Twitter account, or do you want to be a ghost that fades away in their memory?
Just don't be fucking weird. You can find me on Twitter at W_F.
Be fucking weird. Do it.
_Thomas. God fucking damn it.
Jesus Christ.
Be weird. Be weird.
All right. I guess I'm keeping my account locked for a few more weeks. Yeah, I also want to shout out some of the local mutual aid, or one of the local mutual aid groups in the town where I live, or in the area where I live, is the Atlanta Justice Alliance. Their Cash App is cash symbol ATL Mutual Fund, and their Venmo is ATL Mutual Fund. They're helping out. They've done weekly provided food and resources for unhoused people living in downtown Atlanta, and are a great group. And then also, people want to give more money to things. Shout out Atlanta Solidarity Fund, who have helped many of my friends get out of jail after they were arrested at protests. And also, you can hire me.
Yes, if you researchers, yes, you can hire Thomas if you want. I mean, I've known Thomas for a bit. They do really good work. Yeah, they're very in my experience, they're a very careful researcher. They will not say things without thinking about them a lot first, which is always great in a researcher.
So
or at least not publicly.
Send them money and off-putting comments, an even mix of money and really off-putting Twitter comments.
Oh, and one more shout out to my friends at Terrorism Bad Pod, which you should listen to, and is on Twitter at Terrorism Bad Pod.
Well, that does it for us today. If you, for some reason, are on social media and you want to follow us, you can follow us at Cool Zone Media. Or
Absolutely don't do that.
Or Happen Here Pod. You can follow Robert Evans at I Write OK. Send him weird messages.
Definitely do not do that.
And you can send me weird messages at Hungry Bowtie. All right.
Send Garrison pictures of salads that you make. And keep doing that for like 5 or 6 years, to the point that it actually becomes funny, because it's going to take a while.
I'm just happy that people have stopped sending me eel porn. So that's honestly, that's a win. That's a win.
That one's on you, though.
I remember distinctly.
Goodbye, everybody.
Hey, we'll be back Monday with more episodes every week from now until the heat death of the universe.
It Could Happen Here is a production of Cool Zone Media. For more podcasts from Cool Zone Media, visit our website, coolzonemedia.com, or check us out on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find sources for It Could Happen Here updated monthly at coolzonemedia.com/sources. Thanks for listening.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
In 2018, the FBI took down a ring of spies working for China's Ministry of State Security, one of the most mysterious intelligence agencies in the world.
The Sixth Bureau podcast is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to The Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, it's Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And today I'm talking with my dear friend, Krista Williams.
It can change you in the best way possible. Dance with the change, dance with the breakdowns.
The embodiment of Pisces intuition with Capricorn power moves.
So I'm like delusionally proud of my chart.
Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we unpack the story of an unimaginable tragedy that gripped the UK in 2023. But what if we didn't get the whole story?
Evidence has been made to fit.
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
What if the truth was disguised by a story we chose to believe?
Oh my God, I think she might be innocent.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Eckerd. In 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
But here's the thing. Bachelor fans hated him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
That's when his life took a disturbing turn. A one-night stand would end in a courtroom.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.